All right, folks. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Counter Media Podcast. My name is Gary, your host. My co-host is Chris. He's in Australia.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing, Chris? How was your week?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, not too bad.
Nice.
Yeah. Been watching a bit of Chinese propaganda. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of this streamer, iShowSpeed.
You took a break from Palestinian propaganda?
Yeah, I got to mix it up. Sometimes it gets a bit boring if you stay on the same kind of thing. Death to Israel, this, that, and the other. It gets a bit boring after a while. But
it's all the Jews' fault. All the Jews' fault. All right. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Just iShowSpeed. He's that streamer. He travels to different countries. Have you seen him? He's got like 38 million subscribers. He's probably one of the biggest streamers in the world. Anyway, he's just been touring China, showing off basically how good it looks. He's just amazed by all their technology and their cars, and it's very entertaining. Very, I was sort of skeptical about these people, but it's good.
Yeah, all of which was paid for by us, the American people, wanting cheap shit from Walmart. You're welcome. I don't think Australia contributed at all. You guys don't buy shit. I do want to say hi to everybody over in the comments, everybody watching, Jeff Johnson, John Rollins, Jason T.G. Sponksler. Who else we got over here? These long chats that you guys have amongst yourself, I encourage them, but they do screw me up when I'm trying to say hello to people in the comments. I know I saw Lori in there somewhere. Who else we got over here? Jeff Johnson. All I see is Jason T.G. Sponsor saying he's too sexy for something. There's Lori Matthews. Mad Sloper. Good to see you. I think you're new to the chat. I haven't seen you before. If you have been back here, if you've been here before and I missed you, I apologize. Daryl B. And everybody else, make sure you guys say hello to us. But we got a lot to cover. Actually, right before this, just a few minutes, just as I was getting home, I saw the news story about the helicopter crash in New York, which is a huge tragedy. But on top of that, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen a helicopter break apart in that manner. The rotor blades actually absolutely just shattered off in the complete tail section. I put out a post hoping I could get a helicopter pilot or a helicopter mechanic to come on here, provide some information, some context, educate us on that a little bit. So far, I haven't seen anything over in the email, but I'm going to keep that going. And we may, if I can get somebody, we'll bring them on. If not, maybe bring somebody on next week, because I find that whole thing crazy. I don't think it's anything suspicious or anything like that, but it is number one, it's an extremely sad tragedy and unfortunate. And on top of that, I would like to understand the mechanics of that crash. Like, how all of a sudden, as you're flying through the air doing a tour of New York, do the helicopter blades completely fly apart? How does your tail section fly apart? And then the actual fuselage just fall into the water the way it did upside down. Never seen anything like that. So I would love to see an explanation of that for sure.
I've got, Trump just posted about that recently. I think I got it here. It says, terrible helicopter crash in the Hudson River. Looks like 6 people. The pilot, 2 adults and 3 children are no longer with us. The footage of the accident is horrendous. God bless the families and friends of the victims. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy and his talented staff are on it. Announcements as to exactly what took place and how will be made shortly. So, I only just woke up about an hour or two ago, so I'm sort of just catching up on all that myself.
Yeah, that's
obviously a bit tragic. Very tragic.
Crazy.
Yeah. Because there's some sort of news. We had a helicopter crash at one of our theme parks here at SeaWorld a year or two ago. And I guess there's been news coming out investigating that. Just yesterday I was looking at that. Can't remember all the details, but I think 2 pilots crashed into each other. And but that was back in 2003. But they're still investigating it now, what happened. Yeah. Jeff's asking where all my dolls went. The main reason is shadows, aesthetics. I'm trying to muck around with my lighting and stuff like that, and just the extra shadows didn't really work. And yeah, I'm not 100% happy with Trump. with the Yemen bombing. I don't know if you saw. He posted that video of them blowing something up,
Yeah.
blowing a bunch of people up, and it's like, oops. I guess kind of. I don't know. Don't really like that, and all the tough talk with Iran's annoying me a little bit, but mainly it's the aesthetics with the shadows. But at the same time, yeah. I had a nice mix there because I had Trump. He was the Trumpinator, and I also had my neighbour moved out and she gave me she had some statues of composers. So I thought it was kind of funny. I had the Trumpinator and Bach and Beethoven. It was kind of a funny mix, but the shadows didn't work aesthetically, so they're gone. Anyway, that's the answer to Jeff's important question.
Yeah, and sorry, folks over there on Rumble. I don't think I'm actually streaming on Rumble, even though apparently I didn't agree to some new terms and services, and I didn't realize that until it's now showing me. But anyways, so if we're not streaming on Rumble, I apologize. The other thing, folks, let us know if you're hearing that noise that we had in the audio last week. Chris has been really worried about this.
I'm concerned about the viewer experience. Thank you.
He's been pretty stressed out about it.
Yeah, because I noticed at the start I was getting complimented from Jeff and Jason, sort of saying the noise is gone. Chris must have fixed his stuff. I've fixed nothing, by the way. I've changed nothing. I've fixed nothing. Got the same setup I've always had, but just for whatever reason, last week it was being a pain.
Yeah, I saw that pitch lock. It absolutely crazy. I did the same thing. I went through the footage that we had of it, and blew that up, and was kind of just pixel peeping around the image. You can see the rotors, the gearbox. You could see what I never did see, other than the fact that it was missing, was the parts of the tail section. But anyways, I've never seen a helicopter come apart like that. Like I said, I would like to hear a mechanical explanation. Oh, there we go. Apparently Rumble is working. It's sending me all these notices saying that it's not essentially, but good, cool.
We got Eileen here asking if there's an X handle for the stream. I think yours is at Paramount Actual. Should be putting them in the description too, I think, so they could just click you or me and follow and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Paramount Actual, and I'm at Chris Nolan.
I was trying to get a link to that, but anyways, at Paramount Actual, you can watch the exact same stream on X as well. So good. We don't have any noises today. I think it was just a matter of Chris fixing his attitude more than anything. Just wearing that away a little bit.
I think my attitude's worse this week, so I don't know how it works, but anyway.
Yeah, if you will, Chris, I was still, as I was putting this stream together, I was still trying to find more information on the helicopter crash. So if you want to pull up what you have on the tariffs, I'm going to continue to look for other information that we have on the helicopter crash, and let's jump right into the tariffs issue. And folks,
sure.
This is one of the things that, when it comes to the tariffs, it's already affecting us. We just placed some orders for SG Shooters Global. So we buy shot timers from them and this thing called the Pulse. For those of you that are shooters, what that is. It's anti-cant device. The next batch we've been working through with them, in constant communication with them, trying to figure out how much this is going to be. They still don't even know, to be honest with you, but we got a couple more orders of those coming in. So one of the points of that is like, hey, if you need some pulses, the last batch that we have in the shop are available that you won't be paying tariffs for. The other thing I would say is another company that will likely be hit by tariffs and other products is the Super Trickler. We're expecting those, possibly. And then MDT. What we know is not being effective right now, at least any that we placed in the last few days, is Cadex Defense, which is a Canadian company. So we have different products coming from them. Somehow they're getting around the tariffs. I'm sure through perfectly legal means and some sort of loopholes. I don't know what's going on with it, but they are. So there's that. And of course, I guess the tariffs, depending on the countries and things like that, are a little bit ambiguous. Are they on a pause? Are they not on a pause? What's on a 30-day referendum? Like that gets really confusing too. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
there isn't a lot of what they call market certainty with the Trump plan, even if it might be. I mean, hopefully it'll be good in the long run, but it's not exactly clear what's going on and what the future's going to be. So it's a little bit funny for businesses. So it's going to be a little rocky, regardless of whether it all works out in the end. But it is a little bit confusing. But yeah, Trump, he may as well just bring. So this was his post that sort of kicked off the pause. It's kind of funny. It's such a major change, and you saw the markets. They dropped when he first announced his tariff policy, and they all came up as soon as he announced this pause. But the pause was just this sort of long Truth Social post. It's just the power of one little tweet, as opposed to people voting on Congress or whatever. These kind of big things. But and even in this post, it's sort of buried down the end. But he just sort of says, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realise that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. And then here's the pause, and this is a long sentence, but he goes, conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I've authorised a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That was a bit of a mouthful, to say the least. And then even 100% sure, it's just not very clear, I've authorised a 90-day pause and, as if it's separate, and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%. But I'm understanding they're the same thing, aren't they? He's paused the higher rates above 10, and he's brought them back down to 10, except for China, I think.
It's almost impossible to keep track. I mean, it seems like and again, I support that. I think this is long overdue. We've talked about this in the last podcast. I think we've been selling out America's interest for cheap goods for a really long time, and not just when you buy all these cheap throwaway goods, like they end up costing you more just in the product standpoint, right? It's like you remember like when Craftsman tools, I know you guys probably didn't have Craftsman, but they were good American tools. I know you probably didn't have those in Australia because you guys don't really make much over there. But in America, we have Craftsman tools, right? And they were some of the best tools, very reasonably priced. And then they were bought out by China. And now you buy Craftsman tools or these other Chinese tools, and they break left and right. They don't fit well. Like, it's garbage. You end up going through, and the cost. One of the things I always talk about, and this is especially true when it comes to firearms and accessories and things like that, like, I'm too poor to buy cheap. When you buy quality, like American-made stuff, it lasts longer, and you end up spending less money in the long run. But we've gotten to the point where we no longer believe in that, and we just look at that initial price and say, so we're selling our future down the road for these cheap goods that are just junk to begin with and cost us more in the long run. Just on if we isolated just the product itself, much less the fact that they cost us more from a national security perspective, American economic perspective, and American jobs perspective down the road, buying all this crap from China. And the other thing too is, like, we've created a monster out of China by sending all our money over there to them. I mean, we're the ones funding their navies and their military industrial complex and their advances in technology. Again, look at all the advances in technology they've made with AI, with military weaponry, their stealth program, all those things. They have those because we've developed so much stuff that ends up getting cross-contaminated and accessible to China. They wouldn't have any of that. They wouldn't have the funds for it, and they wouldn't have access to the information to it if we didn't have Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all these other companies doing a lot of production and a lot of business in China. So it's a quadruple-edged sword and it's cutting us in every single way possible, and it's really bad. And we gotta get this under control. And these are things that Trump's been saying since the 80s. I don't know. Did you want to do you have that clip of Nancy Pelosi talking about that?
Was that in a group chat somewhere?
Yeah, it was in a group chat on X. It's worth pulling up. But the other thing that's worth pulling up is, again, there's an Oprah interview with Trump, and he's saying the exact same thing in, like, I don't know, it was like 1986 or something like that. I mean, his message hasn't changed, and it's just as truthful today as it was back in the mid 80s when we were sending all our jobs and business and production overseas.
Yeah, I haven't actually watched this clip. I saw it in the group chat, but I haven't checked it out. But I can play a bit of this if you like.
How far does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit and loss of jobs for the American worker? And how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo? As I mentioned, it's about jobs, proliferation, and human rights. And there are those who say we shouldn't link human rights and trade and proliferation and trade. I disagree. But if we just want to take up this issue on the basis of economics alone, indeed, China should not receive most favored nation status for several reasons that I'd like to go into now. I'd like to call the attention of our colleagues to this chart on the status quo that the business community is asking each and every one of us to endorse today. Right now, we have a $34 billion trade deficit with China, the 1995 figure. It will be over $40 billion for 1996. Since the Tiananmen Square massacre, this figure has increased 1,000%, from $3.5 billion then to about $34 billion now. In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal? On exports, China only allows certain industries into China, of U.S. Industries into China, and therefore only 2% of U.S. exports are allowed into China. On the other hand, the U.S. allows China to flood our markets with a third of their exports, and that'll probably go over 40%. And it's limitless because we have not placed any restriction. In terms of jobs, this is the biggest and cruelest hoax of all. Not only do we not have market access, not only do they have prohibitive tariffs, not only are our exports not let in very specifically, but China benefits with at least 10 million jobs from U.S. China trade. The president in his statement requesting this special waiver said that China trade supports 170,000 jobs in the United States, 170,000 jobs, whereas our imports from China support 10 million jobs at least. Fact is that U.S. China trade is a job loser. And one of the reasons that it is because well, first let me just make another point, and that is that our colleagues on the other side of this issue will say the trade with China, exports to China have increased 3 times in the last 10 years. They have. But they fail to mention that imports from China have increased 11 times, thereby leading to this huge trade deficit. The other issue, in addition, if intellectual property is a $2 billion, $3 billion loss, technology transfer is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. If you want to sell to China, your products into China, the Chinese insist that you open a factory there. They misappropriate your technology, open factories of their own, and then say to you, now we want to see your plan for export. That's as simply as I can say it briefly. But the fact is, this isn't about products made in America. The Chinese want American products that are made in China. And the most serious of these transfers of technology are in the airline industry, where Boeing tail sections of the Boeing 737s were mostly made in Wichita, Kansas. Now they are made in Shen province, where workers make $50 a month. And they had the transfer of the technology and the transfer of the jobs has taken place. General Motors, Ford, they're all fighting to get in to build factories there so they can make parts there. They want MFN so they can get those parts back into the United States. So we are exporting not low-tech jobs and textile jobs. We're exporting our technology. Now, if you take a country the size of China with the very cheap, and in some instances, slave labor, the lack of market access, the rip-off of our intellectual property, the transfer of technology, a country that is not willing to play by the rules in any respect in this trade relationship, you have a serious threat not only to our relationship, but to the industrialized world. And if there's one message that I want our colleagues to understand today and our constituents is that on this day, your member of Congress could have drawn the line to say to the President of the United States, do something about this U.S. China trade relationship that is a job loser for the United States. And this brings us to the point that others have said, well, we can't isolate China. Do you think for 1 minute that with 10 million jobs at least and 35 billion and be over $40 billion this year in a trade surplus, all those billions of dollars in surplus, that the Chinese are going to walk away? Where are they going to take 35 to 40% of their exports? Who's going to buy them? This is what sustains the regime, the funding and the jobs. They can't have those people out of work. They have to be at work exporting to the United States.
Well.
That lady, I don't know who that is, but man, she is clearly a racist, right-winger, crazy conservative. I don't know who that lady is. Yeah, so nothing's really changed there with that. I did have this. People have been talking about it. I haven't seen it, but I do. People have been talking about this video with Ross Perot, and I don't know exactly the time period. Hopefully, we can get. I don't know what happened there. Anyways,
Would have been around a similar time, early 90s.
Yeah,
Yes, Ross Perot when he was running.
There we go. We'll share that, and we'll play that.
Thank you. I want to begin with these proposed tariffs. We're talking steel and aluminum. I mean, you have global projects you're dealing with. As a Trump supporter, though, how concerned are you?
I mean,
It's more recent.
as a real estate developer, and so we've got billions of projects lined up that we're going to build this year, and so we're having to really bend over backwards to make sure we know the impact of steel and aluminum, and what will the pricing be, and if they go through, how are we going to handle it, and will the clients pay the extra price, because it will add cost to these buildings, but also it's a little bit early. Let's see what really happens, but we're preparing for it to happen.
Is it affecting you? Is it affecting
it affects us right now because all the American steel producers are raising their price. And so even without a tariff, prices are going up, and we've got to manage through that price increase.
So at this point, I mean, do you still support President Trump? Do you feel he's making business more difficult for you?
No, I support President Trump because, number one, big picture, we know taxes won't go up. We know regulation is going to go down. And so low tax, low regulation, that is the tailwind business always wants to see to drive business forward. And that's why this next 100 days on the tax bill is so important. You get the tax bill done, the debt ceiling done, you then are going to have a pretty optimistic group of men and women in this nation really building the country. And and remember with this tariff, it's a two-way street, because we are also seeing businesses starting to say, I have to build my factory in America. And so we will hopefully be building more factories for businesses moving into our country.
I've spoken to a lot of Republicans that have expressed concerns like you have for certain policies, but they continue to support the president. So right now, when you look at the Republican Party and you look at the tax bill, you've talked about how there's 6 months really to.
It sure seems like she's trying to egg this guy on or egg other people on, saying how do you still support the president after all this? Kind of leading to the answer to the question that she wants.
Get everything done. Should there be one bill? Should there be two bills? What is the best solution?
Well, first of all, the politicians will figure out the best solution. And from what they're telling me, it's going to be one bill. And I think even President Trump came out and said one bill. So it's going to be one big bill probably in May. And it'll be one big vote. And when that's done, you'll see a lot of relief in the U.S. economy.
You know, being here in Texas, there are obviously concerns here about tariffs and the workforce. How do you think it will affect the Texas economy, which can in turn then affect the U.S. economy?
Whatever happens, Texas is going to do well. Because if you look at every economic cycle, if there's a recession, we go in last, we come out first. So whatever happens, Texas will be fine. The country should be in really solid shape, because if you look around the world, nobody's got a better economy than we have right now. No one's got a better future than we have right now. And then on top of that, put artificial intelligence, put this AI boom that we have. And right now, American firms are dominating AI with a little bit of threat from China. And the China threat's good because it's going to keep us honest. But when you start to run AI.
Yeah, obviously that's not the Ross Perot. Obviously he's been dead for a while. I thought that was a historic clip. Somebody had sent me some historic clips of Ross Perot talking about that, and when I Googled it, that's what I thought it was. But everything you said was extremely relevant and very common sense. I don't know if that's Ross Perot's son or who that is, but clearly I think people in the manufacturing businesses, probably not so much the tech businesses, but definitely the manufacturing businesses, look at this as a good move. And we've got to get production back here in the United States on the things that really matter. Of course, tech matters. We need to start getting our own microchips and things like that. And the high tech Silicon Valley back to producing, as opposed to just designing and then sending those designs to China to produce, and then they steal them. They build their own AIs with them, all those things. But more importantly, we got to get steel back here in the United States. We got to be energy independent, which we definitely became less and less so during the Biden administration.
Yeah, something's definitely got to be done. I'm still on the fence about how it's going to sort of work out.
I think that's fair, and I don't know. I think those of us that support Trump and support more, like, if you support independence here in the United States and production here in the United States and more American jobs and more American companies here in the United States, then you got to support the tariffs, because that's the only thing. We've been outmaneuvered for so long. We've kicked this can down the road for so long that now we're gonna pay. We're gonna reap the consequences that we've been putting off. And for the longer that we put them off, the bigger the consequences. And I think there's no doubt, and we've seen in the stock market is garbage. But at the same time, I think that's a small price to pay if we can get things back on track, and hopefully by the end of this year. The only thing I can say is I think it's the right thing to do, even though it's probably going to suck.
Yeah, it's definitely going to suck for a while. And yeah, hopefully, because something should be done in principle. I'm just still a little skeptical that, this will work out. Like, there's a chance that it might just suck for a while, and, prices will go up and stock market will go down, and maybe not much will change. Like, maybe China just sort of holds out and keeps.
Well, that's the thing is what we're all hoping for is that it's going to be extremely short term, because China can't afford for this to go on. Like 90% of what is sold from China is purchased by the United States. So they really don't have the leverage. And that's the thing too, is like, we're still catching them when they don't have the leverage to compete against us or to really push back on this, because they don't. If we just went another 4 years, 8 years, 16 years, whatever it is, if we continue to push that down the road, we could put all the tariffs on China that we wanted to, and we wouldn't have the leverage, because we'd be so product poor that we wouldn't be able to afford to push through these tariffs or regain the advantages that we currently have.
I'm not sure it's quite that high with the amount that America sells to China, because I just quickly checked it. According to ChatGPT, whatever it's.
That's some hyperbole there, but a majority of the money, I guarantee you, the majority of the funds that go into China come from the United States.
I'm not even 100% sure, because this is what I got. Where are we? Share this tab instead. Yeah, because I just, who does China sell to in percentages? Just got a United States there at 14%. Then Hong Kong, Vietnam. So, I suppose it is possible that China could
Are we saying
survive on...
of their goods, only 14% of their goods go to the U.S.?
That's what GPT's saying, yeah. Because I just said, who does China sell to? And just listed a few things. I said, just tell me in percentages. Yes. And that's what's got 14. 524 billion. That's in 2024. So it's not quite.
Well, we'll have to do some research on that. That seems seems extremely low. That we're only importing 439 billion worth of goods. That doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, I haven't checked this or whatever, and AI could be wrong, but it's probably maybe somewhere in between 90 and 14% somewhere, but I'm not sure
Somewhere
exactly.
in between there.
Yeah, but I think that's the worry though. Is there a chance China could weather this storm? Because a lot of people do say China just can't survive without dealing with America, but I'm not sure if that's. I mean, obviously it's a massive part of it, and they take massive hits. But they could possibly afford to stretch this out, maybe.
Sure.
And not cave. And that could be a bit ugly. But I've got Trump here announcing, after he put out his little Truth Social, I guess this was soon after, when he was asked about it. So I'll play back.
Or any of these champions, any questions while we're here? Yeah.
You started the morning saying be cool, and then just a few hours later, there was a pause put in on the tariffs. Can you walk us through your thinking about why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president.
Just might pause on that because, there's been debate about why this because it sort of seems like a change. Like you were going to put on these sort of big reciprocal tariffs. We went through the little chart. This country's going to get this much. This country's going to get this much. And then he sort of walked all that back. And people are talking about why. Why did he walk that back? And of course, a lot of people saying that's the art of the deal. Maybe that was the plan all along. But it seems pretty clear from that he's reacting to the stock market tanking. And I think the bond market, because I think, China retaliated and then America retaliated back or something. Anyway, the markets weren't doing too good. And as you said, people were yippy, a bit afraid. And that seems to be the reason why he's sort of walked it back. So in a sense, people could say because some people are saying, well, Trump blinked. He was sort of holding out. And I'm pretty sure a few of his people have said before, they're not coming off. Trump is staying the course. And then he sort of pulled them off. Apparently because... people were getting worried about the market. But a lot of Trump people saying, no, that was the plan all along. But it seems to be that, the stock market's sort of tanked and the bond market's not doing too good. So I'll have to back off a little bit.
Hey, and so to clarify, I don't know exactly what you were looking at, but it says in 2023, China's share of total U.S. imports was about 14.8%. That means that roughly 14.8% of all goods imported into the United States came from China. So 14% of our imports are from China. What I want to know is what percentage of China's GDP essentially is dependent on the U.S. That's what the number that I'm trying to figure out. So I don't know if those are just happen to be the same or.
Yeah, I'd say it's just a coincidence. Because the number I have might be wrong, but the number I'm looking at says it's 14% of total exports from China go to the United States. 14.7%. This is in 2024.
Gotcha.
But like what do people in the chat here think? Was this the plan all along to sort of put them on and then wind them back? And is it a coincidence that it sort of happened after I think it was the bond market started going pretty sour or something, and he even sort of said that people were getting a bit yippy, people were getting a bit afraid. Because if it is reacting to the market tanking, I'm not sure that it is. I'm curious what people think, but wouldn't that sort of send a signal of weakness to China that like we will cave eventually? Like because Trump was saying we'll weather the storm and we'll tough it out and things might be a bit rough.
Well,
but then he sort of walked it back a little bit.
The thing that, the impression that I get is Trump is trying to put out there like, hey, this doesn't have to be. I don't feel like Trump is saying or putting out there like, hey, we're going to cave. I think he's saying, hey, we're trying to be reasonable with you. All you got to do is drop your tariffs. We'll drop our tariffs, and we'll everything will be fine. That's the impression that I get.
I'm not sure that's ever been the argument though, because as we went through in the previous thing, he had his sort of massive tariff rates from the other countries, which weren't actual tariff rates. They were just measuring the trade deficit. So, for example, with Vietnam, sorry, they responded pretty much immediately saying, we will drop our tariffs if you'll do the same. But I mean, Vietnam only has, I think, 7% tariffs on America, even though America said it was, America charged them with something a lot higher because it was based on the trade deficit. So if America's put on, I'm just sort of making up numbers, but say it's 40% or something on Vietnam, I can't remember exactly what it was, but their tariff rate on America is only 7%. Because they basically said, okay, we'll get rid of the 7% if you'll get rid of the 40% you put on. And Trump's basically like, well, no, that's not enough. There's the other non-tariff measures that are a problem. Like with Australia, for example, I got an example here from this guy that I really don't like, but he's sort of sticking up for Australia. So, where are we?
We know he's wrong right off the bat. He's lost all credibility.
Yeah, so I'm probably not helping my case because he's making a point for Australia, but he's a guy that everybody here will hate. So it's probably not going to work out in my favour. But anyway, because, I wasn't sure. I was going to mention last time because, you put this tariff on Australia and complain that we didn't take your beef and all that. We have a free trade agreement with you guys. And we actually do have a trade surplus with you guys. I got conflicting... I checked on ChatGPT before. I think I got conflicting messages.
Information.
But yeah, so not only do we have a free trade agreement with you, and we've got a trade, you have a surplus with us, you sell us more stuff than we sell you, yet we still get hit with a 10% tariff. Yet under Trump's logic, because you're buying more stuff from us,
well, look, I think...
we're buying more stuff from you. That would mean that we're getting ripped off by America because there's a trade deficit in the other direction, which isn't actually true.
Well, what I think Trump is trying to, number one, articulate, communicate, and point out is like, hey, there is a cost for doing trade with China, with some of these other countries, especially when there's inequalities in the trade or, hey, we're selling you these goods and then you're marking up the tariffs. So the point is that there's inequalities, there's negatives or deficits or just problems for America doing trade with certain countries. And I think that's true. And the point I think a lot of this is trying to figure that out and say, hey, look, China, we need to put a 10% trade, tariff or whatever else is on there, because this is what it's costing the United States to do business with you. It's costing us jobs. It's costing us this. There's, second and third effects taking place by us buying goods from you. So we need to put this certain tariffs on those goods, number one, to equalize that a little bit. And you're still making money, and then we need to make money too. And being the largest economy in the United States or in the world, like that goes for a lot of other little countries there's probably not an equation, regardless of that BS equation that you put up last week that was provided by the Trump administration, whatever else, that really captures all of that. And I'm sure that is very individualized based on the different industries we're talking about and the different countries that we're dealing with. But I think that is the message that the Trump administration is trying to convey. and I think they're correct. And I also think it's very complicated, and the average person doesn't understand that or think about it or really give a shit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but then for the example of a few countries, I think Singapore is another example where you have a trade surplus with us. So in effect, all those arguments that you were making about America, there being an inequality there that's bad for America, that needs to be fixed with America tariffing other countries, basically that same logic makes more sense coming from us. Like Australia, we could say there's a deficit with you guys, that's bad for us, we need to tariff you guys to fix this inequality. And Singapore could say the same, because you also have a trade surplus with them. But
I'm not
still
saying
get hit.
It's not even necessarily dictated by a surplus or a deficit when it comes to trade. What I'm saying is that there should be people within our government and says, hey, look, you know what? Yeah, we sell a lot more goods to Australia, but we're also the primary import from Australia, for instance, is aluminium, right? Basically, we're importing an extra I in there somewhere. But basically, but when we import aluminum from Australia, like, hey, that has this economic effect on our domestic product, on our domestic jobs and things like that. So it's not about necessarily whether or not we have a trade deficit. What I'm talking about, and I think, and I know that's what the Trump administration is trying to convey, is like, hey, these are having impacts on our economy that doesn't make sense. Look, Australia, if you want us to buy aluminum, we will, because we have enough. There's enough demand that we would use your aluminum, even if we have to tariff it a little bit, and we're gonna end up spending more on it. But the demand is so high, it's still worth it to you to sell it to us, because you're not going to sell it to anybody else, or at least you're not going to have access to a market that's as big as ours. That's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I get that. I don't think they're fully clear with their messaging. Like, that's...
I agree.
Yeah.
That we can agree
It's
on.
not exactly clear what they're doing. And because from the last week, it was mainly all about the deficit. And in fact, they basically said, like, that Peter Navarro, I'm not sure exactly what his connection to Trump was, but other people in the administration, they basically referred to that trade deficit as the sum of all cheating. So any kind of deficit is inherently America getting ripped off.
I agree.
Which, if you take that logic to its extent, would mean Australia's getting ripped off because we got a trade deficit. But that's, not the way to look at deficits.
I think that's them trying to go to the lowest common denominator as far as a talking point in the most succinct way to try to explain it to the American people and sell the American people on it. I don't think that was very well executed. I think you're right. I think their communication, in an attempt to make it as simple as possible, I think actually made it more confusing, which, whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, I basically made these points, and he's going to make them in a more annoying way, but while we're here, may as well.
Trade surplus with Australia. We have a free trade agreement. Why? They are an incredibly important national security partner. Why were they whacked with a tariff?
Senator, despite the agreement, they ban our beef, they ban our pork, they're getting ready to impose measures on our digital companies.
With your Greek letter formula, the fact that we have a trade surplus.
We have a global tariff on everywhere. We're trying to address the $1.2 trillion deficit that Biden left us with.
I think that answer, sir, you're a much smarter person than that answer. The idea that we are going to whack friend and foe alike, and particularly friends, with this level is both, I think, insulting the Australians, undermines our national security, and frankly makes us not a good partner going forward.
The lack of a really, really important point. This is another problem that we have that has muddied the waters with deficits and trade in general. Is, hey, they're our friends, so we don't charge them the economic impact that's going to happen here in America. That's been the freaking problem. It's not about whether or not we're friends with Australia or whatever other country. This is business. It's, hey, you know what? We're friends. But you guess what? There's no friends and family deal that's going to, or our feelings toward one another isn't going to offset the economic harm that it causes the middle class of our country. This is the problem completely. Like, it's not about whether or not we're friends, whether or not about we were allied in World War II and we defeated the Nazis together and stormed Normandy Beach. Has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the real economic impacts of us doing trade with one another that needs to be addressed. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of Americans and their jobs. And then, first, and then we concern ourselves with the English, the freaking Germans, or whoever else that we're doing business with. Yes, they're our friends, but they don't get a free lunch, and we don't do business with them at the expense of the American people. That's what these jackass politicians have expected for 100 years now. They've been selling Americans out because, you're our friend, we won't charge you, even though we're going to put the Smiths, the Johnsons, and everybody else out of business here in the United States. You know what? We're going to make sure that the freaking everybody in Australia and in Europe and everywhere else is taken care of. And screw the Americans, because we're at a lunch party together, we're sipping tea and coffee and booze and whatever else, we're at Epstein's Island together, so we're good to go. That's the problem. This isn't about friendship, it's about pure economic interest.
Yeah, I get all that. Like, I'm not too offended, and this guy's getting more worked up than I am, or whatever, about Australia getting offended. But trade is a two-way thing, and we do have a free trade agreement. We've sort of negotiated that already.
Well,
and I guess now it's changing.
What is the merits of him saying that you guys won't let us sell you guys beef and all that other stuff? He mentioned that. So if we have a free trade agreement and you guys are indeed blocking those because it's against your economic interest, then where does that leave us with the free trade agreement?
Yeah, that's a good point. To be fair, our pretext is biosecurity. I guess you had, I think, through Mexico, mad cow disease maybe 20 years ago or something, and we sort of put a hold on everything. And then I think now we just have a lot of conditions, especially if beef isn't born in that country. I guess, I don't know too much about beef. I guess at least some part of the American and maybe worldwide cattle market, the animals come from overseas. I didn't know that. Because there's actually, if the cattle isn't born in the country that's selling it, there's extra hoops they have to jump through. Look, it's probably a pretext to protect our workers. But I mean, technically on paper, it's like for safety or something.
I mean, we can all come up with freaking nonsensical reasons or crazy equations that don't actually make sense and justify anything. But like, it's either free trade or it's not. We can't sit there and start carving things out because, the swine flu epidemic of 1814 or whatever the heck, right? Like, that doesn't really matter. Like, either we have a free trade agreement, and that means, in my mind, and this definition is probably completely wrong anyhow, but free trade means if I want to sell you stuff and you want to buy stuff, we can do it. But if the governments are stepping in and there's like, nope, not this, not this, not this, not this, we don't have a free trade agreement. We have a bullshit agreement, and you guys are going to manipulate it, as do Americans. You guys are going to manipulate it to where you get the greatest benefit. And that's and again, this is the entire problem that's happened for at least the last 50 years. We've been having this done to America time and time again. It's like all these countries like, oh, yeah, we want to be able to sell you stuff, but we're going to manipulate this to where we're getting over on Americans. And for the first time in history, we're now saying, hey, you know what? You're not letting you get over on Americans anymore. Like, we're going to equalize this. It may be a sloppy, inelegant way at first with a stupid equation that makes no sense. We may not have messaging on point, and it doesn't all make sense what we're saying, but that is what they're trying to do. Make no mistake about it. And I applaud it.
Yeah, but essentially, because essentially it's the same thing, same kind of thing Trump's trying to do with America. So, well, yeah, it's all business. Let's not get too upset about it, because these protectionist things that we have are the exact same things that Trump's trying to do now. Basically, I was going to bring that up. Appreciate that, Laura. I'm not sure if I could pronounce aluminium without any problems over there.
We don't need to. Chris doesn't need to come here. We're going to make Australia 52nd state after Greenland. Don't worry about it. We're coming there. It's going to be ours too.
Maybe that's all part of the art of the deal. He's going to tariff heaps of countries and say, look, you want to get rid of those tariffs? Maybe we just annex you.
I don't. He's already said that explicitly to Canada.
With Canada, yeah.
100%.
But hopefully there's a bit too much patriotism left in this country to, maybe Canadians, I don't know, maybe they might roll over, maybe they don't have, I don't know Canada, I don't want to don't want to speak too much about him, but I think here, I hope here, Australia's like, no, look, we can be friends. Let's not get all upset about it. But no thanks. I'd rather be my own country, as you guys would also. So basically, appreciate the offer, but no thanks. We'll stay somewhat of a sovereign country if possible.
No, you'll be a sovereign state within the United States. Don't worry. We're really big about the federalism here. Like we especially the Democrat, when Democrats are in charge, they're really good at respecting states' rights.
I think this is. I don't know if there's much left of this guy hyperventilating for my sake, my countrymen's sake.
I forgot his name, but he's a freaking worst Democrat.
Warner, yeah, he's obnoxious.
This ridiculous policy that goes into full effect at midnight tonight is extraordinary. I go back to what the market believers believe today is happening. A good day in hospice. I'm afraid if we keep these tariffs in effect, we're looking like an economy that will be in hospice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a trade surplus.
Yes, there you go. I don't want to give Jeff too much credit, but this is a pretty good comment, I suppose. Try and do the best for their country. Just don't get whiny when we do it for us. That's fine, But essentially it goes both ways. I mean, you guys are sort of whinging about not taking your beef or whatever.
Well, again, the problem is, and this is the point of this argument entirely, or this problem entirely, is you're right. Like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? And the problem is that America has been getting screwed over by every country for a really long time. I don't think there's been equitable trade, and definitely not anything that's remotely looks like what we think free trade looks like amongst countries for a really long time. Our cars have been banned forever. Our steel's been banned forever. If it wasn't, all of these steel manufacturers, all the industrial manufacturing that we did in the United States wouldn't have gone under. Forget about the fact that we would be using our own steel and our own cars and all these other things, but the rest of the world would be dependent on our products as well. And that's what's taken place, is all of these, and part of it has to do with, domestic politics. It has to do with tax rates. It has to do with corporate taxes. It has to do with unions. It's a complex problem, but I think where we do start it out is like, hey, you either have to buy our goods and reciprocate in trade, or we're going to make your goods more expensive to sell here. It's one of the two. And I think it's a reasonable approach, but the rest of the world and the Democrats, because they don't like America, are freaking out about it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of disadvantages to the way things have been. I think a lot of the American elite has a lot to be responsible for that in politics and business or whatever, like the way, sort of worked out for them. And to be fair, there is the other side of the equation of importing a lot of stuff from China. It's bad for your domestic job base, but it is good for the cost of living. You can get cheaper goods overseas, made basically sort of slave labor almost.
Yeah.
And the average American has a lower cost of living because of that. So it is somewhat of a balancing act. And maybe overall that lower cost of living is not worth losing your domestic sort of base.
Well, just like I talked about earlier too, I think there's an argument for a lot of things that you are spending less money on initially, but they don't last as long. So you end up spending more in the long run. I mean, the fact is that we have all these. I got a Samsung refrigerator up there that I paid buku monies for. That within like 2 weeks of buying the thing, the ice maker was broken. Come to find out, it was piss poor engineered. It was made in Korea. It's a piece of garbage. I used to be able to buy a Kenmore that would last forever. Maytag or whatever else that would last 20, 30 years. You can't buy a fridge today that's going to last 20 or 30 years. Never mind what we're doing with vehicles. Vehicles are freaking, everybody changes out a vehicle in 3 years. They're made to be trashed in a couple of years. Most of these appliances and things like that have that engineered into them. And I think, I don't know, all of that has to do with the trade problem, but part of it does. Part of it is, I think we started getting cheap goods from other countries, and we realized, and manufacturers realized, oh, you know what Americans really want is a $300, whatever, $1,000 fridge that'll last 2 years instead of spending $1,500 for a fridge that'll last 10 years. So all they did was replicate that business model and make garbage cheap shit too. And you know what? When it comes to building cheap shit, China can out China us any day of the week. But I do think that has been a change in the way that we are buying patterns in general because of that.
Yeah, I just worry that with the way things are now, to sort of make good American products that'll last a long time, maybe the difference in price is a lot worse now. Like maybe it'll cost you like, a point to where it's like unfeasible to buy, if like fridges, if all the components and manufacturing's done in America. I imagine that'd be a pretty expensive fridge. I don't know, the fridge process or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen those memes. I guess they came from China, supposedly, sort of mocking America, the idea of bringing the manufacturing back, where it's got all these Americans in like little factories, little sweatshops. And of course they make them all fat. I guess that's kind of a dig at Americans being fat or something. Have you seen that video? I probably can't bring it up because it's got a bunch of music that'll get copyright striked or whatever. But there's sort of these AI videos of just all these fat Americans in a slave labor shop making little widgets, as if like China's saying, well, is this what you're trying to do? Are you trying to bring the sort of Chinese manufacturing model back to America? Because it's probably not going to work.
Well, look, I mean, I think there's clearly still a lot of Americans that work in factory jobs, that are in manufacturing, all of these things. So I think that is, I don't know, I think that's just a silly argument. And this is an argument from the coasts, right? From the left coast and the right.
I think it's a more specific type of manufacturing. Like I worked in a factory. We made boxes for all kind of things or whatever. But I think they're focusing more specific, with the phone components and.
Well, I also think that there is a large part of America, and again, mainly on the East and West Coast, California, New York, and the Democrats, right? There's this liberal elite that thinks that we don't do production. We don't have production jobs here anymore. And the fact is, they're not going to the Midwest, and they don't see the hard work that we have people working in all kinds of factories in the Midwest. We have all kinds, we still have steel production. We still have whatever they're trying to meme away and discount. There's millions of Americans actually doing that job already, and including farming and things like that. And that's one of the big jokes. Like, oh, what, we're going to start picking our own fruit again? Well, guess what? There's millions of Americans that actually do pick their own fruit, that have farms, that do all these things anyhow. And the fact that they're so out of touch that they don't think the rest of America actually worked hard because they live their life in a cubicle, it's just dumb. It's just a dumb argument.
I don't think they're saying that Americans won't work hard. I think they're saying they won't work in the China sort of sweatshop conditions.
Well, no. And guess who else shouldn't work in the China sweatshop conditions? Chinese people. Like, the fact is like, again, we're buying these Apple phones that cost, $20, $30 to make, whatever they cost to make. But the only thing that's worse than corporate greed is government greed. And let me tell you something, the Chinese government is extremely greedy. They control everything. Our government is extremely greedy. They want to take 40-50% of your earnings, and they want to just F it all off and spend it on freaking whatever, overthrowing governments and everything else, nothing that we want it spent on. And then, you pay, I saw, what the average person pays in Social Security ends up being like, they pay in at like over $600,000 over, a 20, 30 year time that they would be inputting into Social Security. If they'd have put that into their own investment accounts, they'd have like $3 million or whatever it is at the end of that time. But yet instead you put in 600,000 and then you spend the next 20 years drawing, I forgot what they said the average was, but you end up paying way more into it than you ever get out of it, right? You end up getting like $250,000, $300,000 back, whatever it is. But the fact is that the government is the greediest possible entity on the face of the planet. It always is, and definitely goes for the Chinese government, because they are doing exactly that. The Chinese government owns all the industries, and they are creating slaves of their own people to produce money and products for a government that says, screw you guys.
Yeah, I generally
and this is true. the way. I do know this is true. There are very, like, you can actually get extremely high quality goods from China. That is true too. But, you know, generally that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos of people saying they've got little businesses and the stuff they have to get it from China because they're the only ones that make it a certain way or of a certain
100%.
higher quality. But yeah, that's
There's some things you can only get, like one of the things you can pretty much only get from China is carbon fiber. And especially if you need specialized carbon fiber products, you can pretty much only get those from China. There's literally no one in the U.S. that would even have the capability of making those things. So, you know, there's lots of things like that. And of course, you can, if you're a company that is producing products, one of the products that we get from China that is one of my favorite brands, Fat Boy tripods. They make one of the nicest, highest quality tripods in the market. Yeah, they spend a premium getting it manufactured over there. And they've, from the beginning, they wanted to get those manufactured here. It is not possible. They don't have anyone that will actually manufacture those here in the United States the way they do. And there's another brand that is very famous that says they're all American made. And guess what? I know for a fact they get their carbon fiber from China, regardless of what they're putting on all their marketing. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down some other time. But I actually have, I don't have proof. People that I know have proof that they're getting their carbon fiber that they say is made in the United States, but it's actually getting from China. And the thing is, if you manufacture, if I take some carbon fiber that I get from China and then I do some manufacturing to it, I do some machining on it, I can now say that that carbon fiber is made in the United States when it's bullshit, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I see a few things here that say made in Australia or whatever, but you check the fine print and this came from here and this came from all over the place. And that'll be interesting with, you know, if you know companies that are, you know, getting stuff from overseas without disclosing that, because, you know, Trump's sort of saying, you know, we want you to buy American. So American prices should stay the same, but overseas stuff will go up, and that's an extra incentive to buy American-made stuff. But, you know, when American companies, they do source materials from overseas. I think even Elon Musk made a point about this with his Teslas or whatever. It's like, yeah, but we do source a lot of materials from overseas, so these tariffs will affect us. So this idea of, like, you know, just buy, unless things are 100% made in America, this idea of, you know, if you buy American, those prices aren't going up unless, you know, they have at least some sources from overseas, which I'm sure many companies do, even though a lot of it will be made in America. So even these made in America companies, their products will probably go up too, if they're sourcing from overseas, which a lot of them do. So that'll be interesting to see. When we were saying a little while ago about, you know, how you treat friends or whatever, it's not about that. It's just about, you know, sort of looking after your country. It reminded me of this one. Surprise, surprise, another country. Yeah, because just before this happened, just before Trump announced his tariff rates, you know, basically said we'll be doing reciprocal tariff rates. So the day before, Israel dropped their tariffs. I think Israel had a 17% tariff on America, and I think that might be a real number, not sort of the Trump fake number. But just before Trump did this, Israel got rid of it. So okay, all right, well, we've reduced it from 17 down to 0. I thought that was kind of funny that if it is true, I have to double check it, that Israel charges 17% tariffs on America. I think that's, you know, a little bit, I think there's a lot of gall in that, but anyway, that's another thing. But anyway, they did that, but they still got hit with a tariff. So I saw a lot of people in Israel were complaining. It's like, hey, we got rid of our thing. How come we still got hit with a tariff? And here, even when Netanyahu visited Trump recently, he's asked, oh, will you reduce the tariffs on Israel? And Trump's like, yeah, maybe not. So anyway.
On where?
On Israeli goods.
Yeah, you're going to reduce tariffs on Israeli goods?
Well, we're talking about a whole new trade. Maybe not. Maybe not. Don't forget, we help Israel a lot. You know, we give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions.
There you go. So I was a fan of that. Of course, I had to squeeze that into the show. You know. But yeah, I got a. Oh yeah, I was going to bring it up too.
Yep.
Super chat from Laura.
Thanks for the super
Sorry,
chat.
yeah. Sorry to deviate, but I'm over Christy Noam cosplaying, holding a rifle pointed at an ICE agent's head instead of in the low ready position, along with not knowing how to wear a vest correctly. Had to get that off my chest. Well, you'd speak better on that, Gary. I haven't seen the picture or know the proper hold.
Chris doesn't know what a rifle is. Yeah, so
So you point them, I guess. Apparently,
I agree with you. I think anytime that we get politicians around rifles, although I do know the picture that you're referencing, and Chris, if you can find that while I'm talking about this,
I'm not sure. The only one I really know of is her in the prison with all the prisoners behind her.
No,
which I didn't really like. So I'm not sure what the other one she's saying with the rifle.
known with a rifle. The other thing I will say, here we go. All right, so this is what she's talking about. Then it turned into a video, and now it's moving on me. Hold on. Son of a bitch. Gonna make me watch a commercial. Let me see if I can find that picture. Let me find it with rifle. I just want to see if she's actually holding. Here we go. Here we go. I'll share my screen with you. Yeah, it looks like she's actually. I think you were correct. Hold on. Let me add this to the stage, and then I will share this one instead. All right, so you guys can see this is what she's talking about. It does look like that rifle is pointed directly at Homeboy's head. Sometimes you get some of these pictures. Like I'll even when we do, yeah, there we go. Even when we do like class photos and things like that, you know, given perspective, it looks like people are pointing rifles at people, and I know they're not because I was there and I made sure it wasn't happening, and I know what's going on. But just again, it flattens out that image, and it gives you the lack of depth of field. So, but I think you're probably right on this. That said, here's what I will say about that: is I do think, anytime that we can get politicians out there in the field, on the ground with people doing their job, I think is probably a good thing. But I can understand the way that you feel about that. It does get a little old, I guess. And it does make her look stupid when she's caught doing something like this.
This is a bit different, but what did you guys think of this one? You know, she went to El Salvador. What she's saying isn't too important. I guess, you know, well, I might as well play it.
And their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know, if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people. Here at Seek.
So yeah, that's that. I mean, I get, on the one hand, I get the deterrence. It's pretty great. I mean, that's, if you want to stop people from, you know, illegally immigrating into your country, that's a pretty good deterrent. But there's something about that that's sort of just the image. You know, the idea of shipping. I understand they're not residents of America, but wasn't there even talk of taking American criminals to El Salvador? And you look at that prison. I mean, look, they're crammed in there like sardines. I mean, it's not exactly a. Yeah, it's not an Australian prison with drum kits and yard time and all that kind of stuff. This is like the other extreme of prison, prison where you just cram them in there.
And equipment, all those things.
Yeah, it's a whole different story in El Salvador. I don't know. There's something about.
Well, look, I think
it seems a bit too much.
The problem is it doesn't look normal. Whether you want to say that it is grandstanding or, you know, creating photo ops or whatever else, the fact is she's actually at the raids. That's established. She is going to other countries. She's been on the border. She's been out there doing shit. And, you know, the thing is anytime that you're out there doing shit is when you're giving ammunition to people that can use different situations against you. So I think that's going to be part of it. I would like to see that this be normal and not look and feel weird to us to begin with. I mean, you know, the Secretary of DHS should be out on the ground and know what the heck is happening in in the real world, as opposed to just meeting in conferences and getting, operational reports via email. I like this. So, I think it's gonna produce fodder, right? And it's gonna produce things that can be used against her just like that. But it reminds me of that, I don't know if it's a joke or a parable or something, but there was this one guy on the job site, and every time that something would get messed up, it's like, oh, that was John. Oh, what's this? This is all messed up. This is John. Well, this guy messed this up. Oh, it was John. Well, and then the boss was like, you know what? I'm firing the rest of you guys because John's probably the only one that's actually doing anything. And that's what I feel is happening here. And maybe I'm just being completely biased, but I do think overall she's doing a pretty good job. And look, here's a fact. Like the border was the biggest crisis going into this administration. It is zero problem right now. Now what we're doing is we're getting rid of gangs out of different cities and things like that. I would like to see something more aggressive, but as far as the border goes itself, undeniably, the border crossings are shut down. The border is closed. Like nobody is getting through that border. That's a fact. They're not deporting as many people as I'd like to see. And then we have activist judges stopping those deportations. So they're fighting those battles, but they've done a lot. They've done all the things that the last administration said they couldn't do. And, our border crossing.
I don't know enough about it. We might look at it in another show, maybe once I've checked out the facts or whatever. But, because, the judges, they did, they blocked a bunch of things. One of them including that one guy that supposedly was linked to MS-13. But I don't think he committed any crimes. As I said, I'd have to look more into it. But the one where they shipped someone to El Salvador? Sort of by mistake, it seems. Like maybe he was a bad guy, but I think they mistakenly.
So I heard, number one, that was a lie, and then I heard that it was true. I quit caring. Like if you're from El Salvador, and I don't know. Like I don't like. If we need to get rid of a lot of people, and every now and then we're going to screw that up too. Like you're going to have some collateral damage where, somebody gets wrapped up, gets sent back to the wrong country. It doesn't really pull my heartstrings that much. But you're right. I think that is a good story to confirm.
It might pull your heartstrings though, but you imagine there are a lot of people, especially on the left, but even people in the center, that would be a little queasy about deporting too many people. And just if there's mistakes, if there's these sort of, prisons with people 5 high on top of each other, the more bleeding heart would be like, oh, I don't know about this. Let's just be nice to everyone and stop deporting people. And maybe that sentiment will win. I think there's a bit more of an optics play that should be done. If you want to kick out a lot of people, you probably should not give opponents.
It definitely gives the left-hating, America-hating left ammunition to be used against us, and it definitely gives them propaganda, and not even propaganda. It gives them a talking point that they shouldn't have to begin with. So we should be careful with that, no doubt about it. But I'll take that. I'll take 1 in a million being wrong than tens of millions coming in here illegally, because that's what you're asking me to put in the balances here. Like, oh my God, the Trump administration actually, accidentally deported someone that shouldn't have been deported, whereas the Biden administration intentionally used taxpayer funds to fly in millions of illegal immigrants and put them here in our country, all for the sake of ultimately getting them legal status so that they can vote Democrat. That's what's going on. So I'll take, if they make a mistake, you know what, Trump, you're forgiven. Gary forgives you. Fix it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What else was I going to show? I'm going to show a little bit of because after Trump announced a bunch of things.
But go ahead. I was just looking up this El Salvadorian that was accidentally and trying to figure out the truth of this.
Yeah, as I said, I'd need to research a little bit more. But just the response I saw from JD Vance seemed to me like, yeah, it was a mistake, but they're trying to say, well, some court thing from a while ago said he was related to MS-13 somehow, so therefore we don't really care. Well, he didn't put it that way. But he's basically, it seemed like he was admitting, yeah, they stuffed up, but he was a bad guy anyway, so we don't really care.
I think that was the original. So as of today, here's a report on Fox News. It says the Supreme Court on Thursday upheld a lower court's decision to facilitate the return of Kilmar Obrega Garcia, a Salvadoran national living in Maryland. from an El Salvador prison, where federal officials sent hundreds of suspects, criminals, and gangs members in March. Garcia, 29, was deported to El Salvadorian mega prison last month for being an alleged MS-13 gang member, but his attorneys maintain he does not have any gang ties.
Yeah, because I was looking at there was some previous court case where it was alleged he had MS-13 links.
Yeah,
but yeah, whether it's true or not, it hasn't been. I don't think it's not for sure that he was MS-13, and it could well be that they're latching onto that to justify a balls up of some kind.
Yeah,
or he could be MS-13 and good riddance or whatever, but. I don't know.
I mean, the fact is, he did enter the United States illegally in 2011 and traveled to Maryland, where his older brother, a U.S. citizen, lived. So at that point, I really don't care if you're MS-13 or not. You still came into this country illegally. Apparently, on March 28th, 2019, Garcia went to a Home Depot in Hyattsville, Maryland, to solicit employment and was recruited by 3 other men. Anyways, so he got wrapped up in some other stuff. Whatever, man. He came in illegally.
But is that what sort of the idea that you want to get rid of, illegal immigrants from the country? But wouldn't that, be sort of just sending them back to their own country? Whereas the Salvador thing, they're sending them to the country and putting them in jail.
That's the problem. I agree. That's not what we want to do. But I sure as heck. So the argument on the left is from the Democrats. You said you were just going to get rid of. You said you were just going to get rid of dangerous illegal immigrants or violent offenders. No, we want to get rid of everybody. Yeah, we're going to focus on, as we should. We're going to prioritize dangerous illegal immigrants, but they're still illegal. They're here illegally. All right, they broke our laws. They came into our country illegally. They need to get out. So it's just, it's the Democrats grasping at straws. But I think the message from Trump has been clear from the very beginning, going all the way back to 2015. Like, hey, that's what won him the first presidency, is like, we got to get rid of all these illegals. And, the crazy thing is, we've been saying there's 10 million illegal immigrants in the United States since like 1990. Guess what? We probably have closer to 50 million illegal immigrants here in the United States. I bet we're awfully close to that number. And whatever the Trump administration has done so far has not even begun to put a dent in those numbers.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning that the numbers do seem to have gone down a bit. And, we did have a lot more... There's a lot of theatrics going on, I think, initially, which is good because that sort of stopped people from coming in because they look at these sort of theatrics of like raids and even having Kristi Noem and Dr. Phil or whatever, putting them on TV. It's a good way to persuade people not to come. But in the same way, I wonder, is it almost a good way to make it, appeal to the base? Look what we're doing. But then, because we used to get the numbers every week or even every day, we deported this many. I think they've stopped doing that. I think because the numbers have gone down a bit.
Well, that was, I think that was
first they were using military planes.
I think it was border cross. I don't remember them saying like we've deported this many. Are you talking about the Trump administration or are you talking about the Biden administration?
Trump. Yeah. What were the numbers? They were saying, it was 400 this day, or either deported or arrested.
I think they were talking about in specific operations. I don't remember there being like a running daily count. Like, we deported. What I think they were saying was like, hey, we had this because at first, and I don't know if they're still ongoing. I think they are, but there were all these like raids with Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, and they were going around. They were doing these operations, supposedly targeting violent criminals, and like, we deported 400, 500, whatever it was. But I don't know that it was like a running tally. And I'm sure there were large concentrations of dangerous illegal immigrants that even after the first or second one that has happened, I'm sure those disperse. So I'm sure that it's harder to do that to begin with, just dealing with criminals in general. They're once they start getting pressured, they're going to start moving out, and it's just going to be harder to begin with.
Yeah, but I think that's the fact remains. It's he's not deporting quite as much as he let on. Which
Agreed.
I think we sort of already knew might be the case anyway.
Yeah.
because he was talking a big game of as if like maybe he's going to kick out 20 million or whatever. But yeah, here we go. Got a nice little super chat here. Good question. What are your thoughts on the US's first $1 trillion Pentagon budget? I haven't even really kept up with it, but yeah, I guess Dodge isn't looking at the Pentagon after all. You know? On the one hand, you might say you want to increase things because of China or this, that, and the other. But, I mean, there's got to be plenty of waste in the Pentagon. I don't think you need to be spending
I agree.
so much on the Pentagon.
I think it's horseshit. I think we could be doing 3 times as much, both in weapons acquisitions, training, and operationally. We could be doing 3 times as much with half the budget that we do, but because it's an unaccountable budget and because no one looks at these things, and hopefully Doge will start, there's still this thing in American mindsets where if we throw cash at it, it makes it better. And we've done this with education. It's like, oh, education sucks. Well, guess what? Next year, we're going to spend $3 trillion on, you know, the Chicago school system, and everybody applauds like freaking clapping seals, but nothing actually gets done and nothing actually works. And I've said it a dozen times on this. I need a t-shirt at this point. Like the most expensive, least effective solution will be government every time, and your tax dollars every single time. So no, I don't think that we should have a $1 trillion Pentagon budget. There are war hawks. There are Republicans. There are conservatives that would applaud that. That's stupid. And part of me, the cynical part of me is see, we've had the left that has been all about this Ukraine initiative. So what they have done is they've garnered a lot of support from these, you know, military, the military industrial complex, whether that be, you know, all these contractors like, you know, Boeing, all of them, right? GDIT, all these huge industrial, which I've worked for a lot of these companies in one form or another. And I think that's throwing them some red meat and probably trying to grease the skids a little bit politically, because they do have a lot of power in Washington, D.C. And I think that's part of it. I really do. Saying, hey, you know what? We're going to end the war in Ukraine, but don't worry, we're going to give you a bunch of money over here. So I think it's more corruption ultimately.
Yeah, and you know, don't worry about Ukraine, but maybe worry about maybe we can spend some money over here. Oh, whoops.
On Yemen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Trump posted this. He goes, you know, they're plotting to attack. I'm not sure. People have debated this. People are like, I mean, how do we know? But anyway, there's that. And I just saw this article about the costs. Trump's Yemen bombing campaign could cost $1 billion by next week, with little to show for it. Because they've basically been bombing Yemen ever since those signal chat strikes.
Yeah.
$1 billion for what? Yemen, I'm pretty sure they use cheap missiles that they move. They don't stay there. They come in a position, they shoot, and by the time American can sort of hit them, I think they've already scattered somewhere else. And they've sort of got, I mean, there are probably exceptions of bigger missiles and more permanent structures they can hit, but I don't think they're going to stop them. So it's costing a lot of money. And, you know, there's the risk of war with Iran there, which I don't like, because, you know, Trump basically said, you know, we're going to bomb Yemen, and every time Yemen attacks the Red Sea trading routes or whatever, we're going to hold Iran responsible. So it's, to me, you know, they're escalating this sort of war thing, and there's the risk of war with Iran, because yes, Iran are funding the Houthis, but they're not, you know, they are somewhat independent. They're not just a completely Iranian thing.
Well,
so,
and,
you know,
and to tie into the defense budget, as well as like just gross amounts of spending and overpricing. Like, you know, we've all seen these things where, like, you know, a hammer or a toilet seat costs $20,000 or whatever in line item budgets for the government. The same thing goes with these cruise missiles and every other piece of weapon technology. They cost 3 times what they should cost, right, to actually develop those weapon systems. That's why China's going to beat us, or one of the many reasons that China's going to beat us. You know, the fact is we're paying 3 times what they should, and part of that is just corruption, and part of that is moving money to moving money to number one politicians and funding them and doing all the things and then to black label government projects, and like there's just corruption all around. And the fact is we overspend on everything, every single, whatever the estimate is going to cost from a government standpoint, it's always going to be 4 times as much when it's all said and done. And it's all due to corruption, all corruption. It really is. Somebody talked about, Harold said, Gary, we need to start in our own states the same way Elon is doing federal. I agree. We can do both. Like, that's why we have millions of government employees just in the federal government that could be doing some of that. But you're right. The state budgets, state taxes, state initiatives, even right here in Martinsburg, West Virginia, there's all kinds of things that they just waste money on that's just egregious and ridiculous. Never mind the different crazy rules and regulations they have on businesses and everything else that are just nuts. And that's a whole nother thing that I can go down. That I'm thinking about moving to the county over. So our business is in a different county. It's in Jefferson County. And I'm literally thinking about moving there and running for some sort of office over there to change how stupid some of their rules are for businesses. Like, we have a very small business. They mandated that we put in not 1, but 2 drinking fountains and a mop bucket bin in another area that we had. Like, nobody uses drinking fountains in there anymore. And then you got to have one that is handicap accessible. So I got to have 2 drinking fountains in my building that no one ever comes in. And we just got through with COVID. Like, can we not agree that drinking fountains, number one, are not used? That is a arbitrary and nonsensical expense. That is complete corruption. And then on top of that, it's a spreader of germs, diseases, and freaking, like, it drives me nuts. Like, that's like thousands of dollars that they're forcing you to spend. We had to replumb a bunch of, it was nuts. I'm still angry about it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even me as an Australian, I find that just crazy. We have all that kind of stuff too. You got to have all these kind of ramps and all kind of things. But yeah, that seems crazy with the water fountain, because it's like, surely if you want to go to if when you're buying stuff, your requirement is that they have a water fountain, surely you can shop around for a place that has a water fountain if that's really what matters to you, which of course it doesn't to anybody.
Yeah. Like, can you reference some sort of study that has indicated that anyone has ever been harmed, injured, or died because there wasn't a public accessible water fountain in a freaking place? As a matter of fact, I bet if you did enough study, there's been enough people that have run into one, or I bet more injuries are caused by the existence of water fountains than the non-existence of water fountains. It's so stupid. I just want to go to the freaking yeah, I just want to choke someone thinking about it because it angers me so much.
Yeah, well, okay, we'll move over and put your name in the ballot, and you can fix it. I'll support you.
I'll start coming up with just stupid rules while I'm in there, just so I can show people how ridiculous this is. Like, I don't know. I'm going to force every freaking business I'm going to propose that we force every business to paint all the inside walls red just for safety, and like come up with some nonsense. And everybody like, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, it's so dumb. It's so dumb.
Yeah, just got to find some study or commission some study that says the color red does this to these people and makes them calmer. Or
I mean, think about it. If the entire floor is painted red instead of just putting a red or orange cone, if there's ever any standing water, like, everybody will walk around a lot more cautious all the time. It will prevent any sort of injuries to ever take place. I think it's a good preventative measure. I think it's just common sense.
Yeah. I reckon, just run on that. And you're a sure thing, I think. I don't know if it might be worth time for me to spread the Chinese propaganda that I mentioned at the start. I got it here. This is where is he? This streamer, I Show Speed. I'm sort of saying I'm not sure if the Chinese government's paying him or whatever. They probably should. They're getting good value out of him. I don't think they are, but they could well be. I'm not sure. He travels, he was in Australia a couple of months ago, and then he went to New Zealand, and I think he's headed to Mongolia next. I think he just travels the world and films. and because he's famous, everywhere he goes, anywhere around the world, he just gets mobbed by people. But anyway, and a lot of this was showing off the pretty lights and all the technology. So when you talk about all the waste of America, or even the money that you keep spending to China, this is what it's going towards. And this is maybe what you guys could sort of have if you didn't spend $1 trillion on the Pentagon and have all these kind of things, you know. So I'd just play a bit of it, just for something different.
Oh my God, y'all, this is lovely, dog.
Oh, so he's basically filming.
This is lovely,
But
man.
he hired a drone as well.
Super
So he's the-
idol, the showroom, donate me, then
There's a whole lot of law, like probably won't make too much sense to other people.
Salito.
But for some reason, there's these
Come
Asian
on.
songs that people sing to him, and
Oh my God.
you know, like there's a Chinese song that I think the word "that" sounds sort of like the N word. So they got a song where they're sounding like they're just saying the N word over and over, and it was sort of a meme because Speed, he's black, and you know when he first heard the song, he sort of was all theatrical and he was raging about it. But now he's embraced it. It's a happy song about sunshines and rainbows or something like that. Some Chinese pop song.
So the N word in Chinese actually means sunshine.
No, that I think.
Oh.
And the part in the song where he's or something like that. It's sort of a loose translation.
Gotcha.
But, he's sort of embraced it now. But yeah, as he was touring, people would come up and sing it to him, and he'd sing it with them. And eventually, he met up with the Chinese pop star and performed on Chinese television with him singing that song. Anyway, this is like not important at all.
So let me get this straight. This jackhole has 37 million people streaming this clip right now, or at least
No, that's his subscribers on YouTube. I think when I was watching, it was maybe like 100 or 200,000 people watching live.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
but yeah, no, he's huge. At first, I was sort of like him, and there's that Kai, and these other streamers that are like the biggest in the world. And here I am, just kind of being old and bitter. I'm like, oh, these people, they're so stupid. Why do they have so many fans? I was a bit bitter, you know. But honestly, I watched it, and it's good content. It's just good value, good in real life streaming. But yeah, a lot of it is sort of just Chinese propaganda.
This
I'll put it
shit
on
is
mute
crazy.
if you want to say anything. But yeah,
So futuristic.
So is he live streaming
sorry.
is he live streaming the drone feed?
Yeah, see, that's him here. And normally, see, there's this cameraman here filming him. Normally, it's like this.
I don't
It
know where
just-
here and here is.
Oh, can you not see my cursor?
No.
Hang on. Here, just in the middle.
Okay. He's in
coming
like
through?
that olive green jacket or something like that.
Yeah. And to the left is the cameraman. Normally, it's just the cameraman, but he just, for this thing, he just switched out to the drone shot. So you'll
Gotcha.
sort of see them match up. He's looking for the drone. He's like, where's the drone?
You want to come here? Come closer.
And it was,
I would love to go to China. I have no problem with that. I like Asian culture. I think there's a lot of cool things about China, but make no mistake, I think the current CCP is an enemy to the United States, and I'd probably end up in the clink.
yeah. Jeff asked, didn't that guy get beat up in Japan? No, that's another guy who's like really annoying. There's a guy, another streamer, I forget his name, Johnny something, and he just goes around Japan annoying everyone. And yeah, a few times people just beat the crap out of him, and most people cheer it on because he's so annoying. But this guy, he's not too bad. I mean, look, he might find his personality obnoxious or whatever. But he won me over. He seemed a fairly likable guy.
People would disagree with him being obnoxious, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people love him. But yeah, I just thought I always got to, I'm always, whatever the main view is, I got to chip in with the other, So it's like China, watch out for China sucks, China's screwing us over. I got to come in and be like, well, look at these lights, all right?
You're just a
In their
contrarian.
defense, look at these lights. Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
contrarian.
Well, that's how you get to the
Like to
truth
go to
eventually.
a kung fu festival in China. Well, they just everywhere's a kung fu
Yeah.
festival in China. Like
While he was there, he went to a temple and he was learning kung fu while he was there. It was quite a funny stream, actually.
is
But
that
yeah.
Chinese or Japanese?
He was in a Chinese temple learning kung fu, some type of yeah. And he
Got
met
it.
up with the I don't know if you've seen, was it the Karate Kid, the remake with Jackie Chan? one of the bad guys. He's an actor. Speed met up with him, and they recreated some of the scenes or whatever. But anyway,
isn't the Karate Kid in Japan, or does it matter?
I'm not sure. But the all I know is the actor. He's in China. He met up with him when he was in China. He went to some, kung fu temple or whatever. And it was funny. It reminded me of some old movies. Yeah, he wanted to just get straight into the fighting. But the first thing was like, no, we're just going to spend a few hours running.
I was doing a King of the Hill joke, Jeff. Quit ruining it for me.
Anyway, so I didn't mean to play that for too long. The only other thing I'd like to promote, I just noticed there was a debate with, where are we? Let's get that off for a second. Enough Chinese propaganda. They only paid me for 20 minutes, or however long that was. But, Dave Smith. Okay, so he was on Joe Rogan not too long ago, and he's just been back for a debate with Douglas Murray. Now, if people recognize those names,
yes, I actually
they would know.
Planned on. I actually wanted number one. I already seen a couple clips. I was actually planning on, as I was telling Chris, I was basically at the shop today till 6 p.m. and I was planning on getting back much earlier, but I got caught up in phone calls and other things and all this stuff. Long story short, I wanted to pull some of those clips and play those for tonight, but looks like you beat me to it. So send it.
Oh, well, I haven't actually got anything prepared. I haven't had the chance to watch any of it yet.
Gotcha.
So I'll just be randomly played.
In the 1920s, he got to power on it, and he grew his power on the back of it.
So
the idea that
Nazi
you can
debate.
argue that in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler was downplaying the anti-Semitism, like, there's no historian who would agree with that. So why would you throw out the idea that in the 1930s, Hitler was not being anti-Semitic in public? That was what he was doing in public. He announces to the German parliament what he wants to do. So when you're throwing out...
I think in the context of this, there's that guy, I forget his name,
I know
Daryl Cooper. He's got a
Daryl,
podcast.
Yep. He was just
he
on,
went on talk.
which, by the way, was actually, I didn't know who this guy was. He was just recently in the news, basically saying that he was very anti-Semitic and a lot of different things. And anyways, I listened to the podcast with him and Joe Rogan. I started listening to, it's called his original podcast that they kept referencing, Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem.
In the New Jerusalem, yeah.
I haven't finished it. He makes some, I think he's attempting to make some points from a very objective standpoint, and I understand where people will easily take what he's saying and twist it around. And maybe he has a somewhat anti-Semitic, what would be construed as an anti-Semitic take on things, or his version of what he believes to be true as far as history. I haven't got that far, and it wasn't discussed that much on the Joe Rogan podcast. But if you watch that podcast, you can kind of get a sense of who he is and kind of how he approaches things. So I am interested to listen to the entirety of that. Here's what I will say is, like, when there's somebody like him that tries to take an objective approach and just looking at history and saying, hey, look, this was the Germans' perspective on things, and you're being objective, and here's like the Jews' perspective of things when it comes to Israel and all these other things. I think you're not allowed to do that. And that's something that was brought up multiple times, is like, you can't say, hey, look at this from the Germans' perspective. I think it should be done. I'm not saying that it justifies anything they do, and he doesn't make that claim either, by the way. But I do think that is what he's attempting to do, is like, look, let's take a look at this from the German perspective. Here's where they were coming from. Here's what they were dealing with. Here's what happened in World War I, which moved us along and put us in the position that they were in with World War II, or the beginnings of, or the rise of Hitler, and what Hitler was exploiting and capitalizing on, the feelings of the German people. That's what he was kind of doing. So, you know, and you're not allowed to do that in Western history, academia, or anything else, or just public opinion. I think there's a lot to be learned there without trying to say, hey, the Germans were justified and Hitler was justified in what they're doing. I think we need to learn from history, and that's how you do it. You don't just take one side of history and say, oh, this was all bad, because then what happens is you do what we are, the where we are and how we approach things and how we debate things and how we talk about things here in the United States leaves us more susceptible to be tricked into doing horrible things, just like the German people were tricked into doing horrible things and made them more easily indoctrinated in crazy things that you give a couple times, a little bit of separation, they wouldn't have been susceptible to that. But because of how Hitler approached that and what happened in World War I and what happened afterwards and the environment, if you never put yourself in that perspective, which is what he's attempting to do, which you're not allowed to. I think that makes us more susceptible to being fooled and tricked into stupid things like the COVID lockdowns and all the nonsense that we dealt with COVID, because we've never looked at it from that perspective, and you're not allowed to. And if you do look at it from that perspective, you're a Nazi sympathizer. And I think that's what he's being portrayed as, and that is not his intent from what I can tell.
Yeah, I completely agree. So much that it's almost worrying, But yeah, because that's my impression. I've only seen his Tucker Carlson interview, and Laura mentions here. No. Yeah, I'm just saying the clip that we played. Douglas Murray was talking to Dave about something that Cooper had said, because Dave defends Daryl Cooper. They're friends, and I think a big part of the podcast is, or at least some of it, is Douglas Murray attacking this guy. I think he even attacked Joe Rogan for having him on the podcast because he's such a bad guy or something. But I think Gary's right. He seems to just show all the different perspectives, which is not allowed, especially in World War II. But it's probably the same with like the Russia thing. Like we've sort of looked at things from the Russian perspective as well. And for some people, that's not allowed. That's quite offensive to people. But that's what you need to do to look at the situation. It's not even justifying the things that get done or whatever.
Well,
this.
And the reason I was very intent on, because I've just seen this done too many times. Like when I start hearing about this boogeyman in the media, I was hearing about Daryl Cooper and that he was, a modern day Nazi. And I heard just a bunch of little things peripherally about Daryl Cooper and what he was. I was like, oh, I got to go watch this podcast. I want to know who this guy is, if he's really as bad. And again, the caricature that the media has turned him out to be, and then what I experienced firsthand and just listening to him, trying to listen to objective. I don't know if he's a good guy, bad guy, or what. Like those are very, very different images of a person for sure.
Yeah. And I think he also got in trouble because he was sort of being hyperbolic, but he sort of basically made out like Churchill was the real villain of World War II. And he almost sort of says it to rile people up in a way. But he sort of makes the point
he addresses that very, very directly with Joe Rogan. He was like, I was kind of making a point that like this didn't have to be a world war. And there's probably some truth to that. I don't know if it's true or not. Like none of us do. He doesn't know either. Like we don't know what could have prevented what fork in the road that anyone back then could have taken that wouldn't have ended up with tens of millions of people dead. We don't know that, but that was the point that he was trying to make. I think to be fair and just to make sure that we're precise and accurate is maybe back this up a little bit and make sure that he's indeed talking about Daryl Cooper. I think you're right, and I'm sure that's correct. But
yeah, we could back up if we need to. I think if we just play it forward, I think it'll be clear. But yeah, we will double check that.
Bring out claims like he was keeping it down in the 1930s. First of all, what are you doing? And secondly, why?
Okay. I mean, I think that it's kind of hard because I don't even know exactly what Daryl's point on that was. And so I'm not really in a position to argue.
I've heard that Hitler was more really anti-Semitic when he was campaigning for more political reasons, and he toned it down a little bit later on, which I don't know. But that's obviously what Douglas Murray has a problem with. And Dave's not even sure of that argument. But
I do, again, just working off my terrible memory, Daryl Cooper did reference, he's like, look, there were he was basically saying, like, he spouted a lot of anti-Semitic rhetoric, according to his writings and other things that he's researched, more for political gain. As a matter of fact, he was talking about how Goebbels was like going on this crazy, like he was just taking that and running with it and spending a lot of time on this anti-Semitic propaganda and all this. And like at one point, Hitler calls him up. He says, "Hey, look, freaking tone it down a little bit." Again, I don't know how true that is. I don't take that as gospel, but I also don't dismiss it as nonsense either. I don't know because I haven't researched that. But the overall point that Daryl Cooper, I think, was trying to make is, I don't even know that he was making a huge point. He was just like saying, "Hey, look, this is the history," and he was trying to give everyone a perspective from the Germans of what was going on. I don't think it was even anti-Semitic intentionally in nature, but I understand how people will translate that into or perceive that to be a anti-Semitic intention, right? Putting a lot of anti-Semitic intention on. I don't know Daryl Cooper's heart. I literally listen to one podcast. I want to listen to that entire
the history on
fear,
Israel,
loathing in New Jerusalem, and I can give you a better assessment on that. But I would like to hear not Daryl Cooper. What's
Douglas
his face?
Murray, Dave
No,
Smith.
David Smith.
Yeah, I think he just said that. I'm not exactly sure of that point, so I'm not sure he'll have a great.
What I don't
Still.
understand is if they're going to be talking about Douglas Murray, why was Douglas Murray not on the show? Because
Cooper, yeah.
Or Daryl Cooper.
Yeah, I guess apparently in the first 10 minutes, it's mostly Douglas Murray bringing up all these bad people that Joe Rogan has platformed. So he mentions this Cooper. He also mentions that Ian Carroll. I think we've mentioned him before. He's sort of the hipster TikTok guy with the mustache that's sort of blowing up.
Yeah.
He was on Joe Rogan's podcast speaking critically of Israel and maybe some sort of Jewish angle as well. I haven't actually seen that thing, but that was quite controversial, that one. So I guess he's complaining about having him and platforming this other guy. And because Dave has sort of defended this Cooper a few times before, I think even on Piers Morgan. But as I said, I haven't watched this. I was actually planning on watching this as soon as we finish the debate. I'm probably going to tuck in for the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what. Just play a little bit of it before we go.
Sure.
Even know exactly what Daryl's point on that was. And so I'm not really in a position to argue what he was saying there. I don't think you're giving him the most charitable interpretation.
I don't need to give him the most charitable interpretation to be able to see
Okay,
what
I think you're
he's
straw
doing.
manning him, I should say.
Look, anyone can look up what he said on this show and others, what these two guys in particular have said on repeated podcasts with both of you. It's an attempt to downplay Hitler and always to do down Churchill.
I don't think you downplayed Hitler.
You're saying I've
Whatever way
downplayed
they
Hitler?
No, I said in conversations with you and others, this is the shtick of these guys. They've decided it's edgy and funny, and I think this is very, very interesting and also.
I think it's more like you were saying. It's showing that other perspective and even having some kind of nuance in World War II. Are we allowed to have any nuance in World War II? I don't think so. Yeah. It's just black and white. You know, the devil took over Germany and, you know, the forces of good defeated him. And that's basically it. You can't have any divergence from that or any sort of details of what the German people were thinking or what the context was. Yeah, after World War I and the Treaty of Versailles and the situation they were in, it was ripe for... The conditions were right for a leader like Hitler to come in and say, well, look at this, and let's blame all the problems on this, that, and the other. And it's such an important moment of history that we still keep talking about all this time later and probably will forever. I mean, everything in politics seems to get reduced back to, like, Hitler. Every time Trump tries to do anything, anything basically, that's sort of like, oh, that's just like Hitler. He's sort of being a bit like Hitlerish. So, you know, so considering how important it is to framing political debates, even to this day, it probably is fine to have people, you know, just looking at different perspectives on it. And, but Douglas Murray's just sort of, being straw manning. I think Dave's pretty good. Obviously, I mean, if it's not clear already, I really like Dave Smith. I've been following him for a few years. I don't like Douglas Murray. I reckon he's kind of very pretentious and his arguments aren't very good.
Yeah,
I saw a big part of this.
A lot, to be honest with you. I like Douglas Murray. I like Dave too. I agree with some of his. I'm like, I agree with 60% of what Dave Smith says, and then 40% I think he's off the rails a little bit. Most of it our divergence is primarily on Israel. So in his defense of Palestinian Hamas and the Palestine and what's going
I
on.
don't think he defends Hamas, but yeah, I know what you mean. He defends the Palestinian side and is very critical of Israel.
Justify, I think, like he's like, what do you expect him to do? And look, there's an argument for that, but I don't think you can look at the totality of what's going on there and ultimately, it's just a disagreement on that. Like, and I don't have like. I would love to talk to Dave Smith. I would love to invite him. Matter of fact, I think I sent him. Matter of fact, I did on April 5th.
Oh yeah.
I sent Dave Smith a freaking, hey, I'd love to have you on. I'm sure he's, I know he's not used to being on a large show like mine and these little small things like the Joe Rogan experience. But I'd love to talk to him. I disagree with them so much, but I like to hear their perspective. And I would love to hear someone explain, not a defense, but I would love to hear just from a knowledge, education, an experience of like how did these normal rational Germans decide, I'm talking about the populists, like how did they decide it was a good idea to kill Jews and to decide that they were going to attempt to take over the entire world and invade Poland and do all the things that they were going to do and invade Russia? Like how did I want to know how they were convinced, because there are some really rational, smart people that, including people in the SS, like some of the generals and officers. And, these are people that started off very rational and then ended up being a part of, genocide. Probably the biggest example of modern genocide we've seen in at least the last 100 years, outside of probably Genghis Khan, what he did. So, I think there's some information that should be gleaned from that, and is an interesting discussion that can be had. But if that discussion's taboo, first of all, that's crazy. We're no longer in a civilized society if we can't discuss the worst happenings and how they happened, as opposed to just it has to be condemnation without any understanding.
Yeah, I completely agree. I hate that it's sort of off limits, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Like, how did Germany go along with that, given the sort of narrative of just Hitler's just an evil guy doing evil stuff, and out of nowhere for no reason.
Well, this is the reason that we don't have the truth behind 9/11. It's the same thing. You're not allowed to bring it up. It's the same thing that they attempted to use to cover up the truth behind COVID-19, its origins, and or the effects of the vaccine. Like, it's the same exact tactic. Like, you can't know what's behind it. And I hate to even kind of compare those two, because we are talking about different things, but at the same time, like, it's the same tactic being used. Like, we can't investigate them. We can't see it from the perspective of the Germans. Like, nothing you ever will tell me will allow me to sympathize with their actions or feel like they were justified in what they did, or that the Holocaust didn't happen. I'd need a whole lot of evidence of any of that. But when people are saying, like, we can't have these discussions, or we can't have, or anyone that even brings this up is the devil, that actually starts to make me worry that I've been listening to a conspiracy. That does that. Like, all my little freaking antennas start going off, like, like, whoa, bullshit detected. Like, what's going on that we can't discuss this?
Yeah, and I think it's a general, if discussion is not allowed on a certain topic, you can almost guarantee that the knowledge that most people have on the topic can't be correct. It might be, the gist of it generally might be correct, of Hitler being a bad guy doing bad things and all that, but like the actual specifics and the truth, people almost can't have an accurate understanding of that, because the debate hasn't been allowed to get to the truth through trial and error and facts, sorting through fact and fiction.
And look, I have heard some compelling, and this may be part of it, right? I have heard, look, the fact is during wartime especially, but I think in general, we are exposed to a lot of propaganda from our own government. And I think more than most of us even realize, probably more than I think that I suspect. So, there may have been some propaganda that people still want to cover up. And I have heard some compelling arguments that, the 6 million Jews that were killed, like that number was exaggerated. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think there's any way for us to know. Like, it doesn't matter if there's 10,000 Jews. Like, I still feel the same way. It doesn't matter if there's 10,000 or 6 million. Like, it was evil shit. In fact is that the entire Nazi initiative was evil shit. But again, I think there's lessons to be learned there if we discuss what's going on and we have access to some truth. But I think ultimately it may uncover some of the bullshit that the American government and or the Allied forces were putting out to strengthen the resolve of the American people to win a war, and European allies as well. Like, so I don't know, but I think I don't think that can just outright condemning those discussions is the way to go about it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And if it turns out that it wasn't 6 million Jews that were killed, it was 5 million Jews, it's still horrible.
Yeah.
And yet, if people would say that, you're sort of attacked in a way. It's almost like, no, it has to be exactly 6 million. It has to, we can't, because there might have been some instances, I'm not sure, I have to look more into it, where there could have been off-ramps where the war didn't have to go the way it went. And I think that's what Daryl Cooper talks a bit about. And he blames maybe Churchill for every step of the way choosing the worst option. And I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I think there's worth looking into that.
Yeah, even from what I heard of it, my general take was, and they didn't stay on that topic a little bit. I could tell that I guarantee you there was a discussion prior to that. Let's not talk about this a lot. I just the way that conversation went, I can almost guarantee you there was some a discussion prior to. But my overall take of what he was trying to convey seemed like Churchill needlessly escalated the war. Maybe true, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it may be one of those things that you really look at history. There'll be 5 historians that think that he did, and that all the people that died didn't have to die. All the war that was conducted didn't need to be conducted, and 5 more feel the complete opposite, or it's split 3 different ways. I mean, that's just a public opinion based on information. But the problem is when we're talking about those things, you're not allowed to have a divergence of anything other than the narrative that we've been fed and the history that we've been fed. What I can tell you for certain is that a large percentage of what we think took place in World War II or the Civil War or whatever else is probably not 100% accurate. I'll just leave it like that.
Yeah, and it definitely is worth. I think it is worth being able to discuss all these kind of things, especially because, as I mentioned before, the Nazis still frame political conversation. And another way it does is when it comes to war. If you look back the last 20 years or more, I mean, I watched the last 20 years more than stuff before that because of my age or whatever. But, it's always like the enemy, like Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi or whoever, they're Hitler. It's like, because you got to condition people like they're Hitler, Putin's Hitler. We got to, I mean, Putin's probably the best example. They're like, him invading Ukraine is like Hitler invading Poland or Czechoslovakia or Austria or whatever beforehand. And if you let Putin take Ukraine, he's just like Hitler. Then he's going to keep expanding to take over all of Europe. I think it's all ridiculous propaganda. And then anyone who's against the war, they are Neville Chamberlain. They are, if America says we're going to go to war with Saddam Hussein, anyone's like, no, let's not do that. It's like, yeah, you're like Neville Chamberlain. Oh, no, I don't want to be weak. I mean, okay, I'll be the tough guy. I'll be more like Churchill, and I'll bomb all these enemies all around the world. And that just guarantees war forever, or almost guarantees.
In retrospect, what I can say, and I know this, again, is there's a large case to be made that the Iraqi people were better off under Saddam Hussein. I know that Saddam Hussein didn't kill millions of Iraqis, and I know that the U.S. government is indeed responsible for killing millions of Iraqis. So, for better or for worse, I mean, those are just facts. Doesn't mean that Saddam Hussein was not evil. I think he was. But, you know, the world is more nuanced than that. Not everything is black and white. And I think if we just objectively weighed the outcomes of what happened over the last 20 years, I think that there'd be less dead Iraqis if Saddam Hussein had stayed in power. And I think that the idea that he would have ever done anything to attack the United States is just utter bullshit. So, you know, take that for what it is. I think that's objectively an undeniable fact.
Yeah, and then all the others, you know, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, yeah, Yemen. I know that was like more of a war with Saudi Arabia for a while, but America was supporting Saudi Arabia fighting the Houthis for years and years, refueling their jets before they go bomb wheat fields and all that stuff.
Before we close out, let's play a few more minutes of this. I think I'm with you. I'm going to end up listening to this into the wee hours, but I do think playing a few more minutes of.
Yeah, because even though I don't like Douglas Murray, he is very well spoken and articulate. I find him very sort of pompous and pretentious or whatever. But it could be because I strongly disagree with him on Israel, so maybe I'm biased that way. But yeah, this should be, and I love Dave. This should be a great debate. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, we'll play a bit more of it. Where are we? Yeah.
Also very dangerous because we live in an era now that the right has got some mojo back in America. We saw years of crazy left overreach where they tried to make us all say the craziest things. And completely predictably, there are now figures on the right playing with really dark and ugly stuff on their side.
I agree
and
with
they
that.
are mainstreaming
I don't
this,
think
and I
Daryl's
think it's
doing that.
partly being mainstreamed by the two people I just described. And both of you have kept speaking to these people, and you don't get on the historians who know about this. And that's just alarming to me.
Well, can I just say, so because I kind of do agree with part of what you said there. Like, I do think it is true that almost as a reaction to like the woke insanity that we've seen on the left, and I think literally, I think nobody's been a more effective critic of that than you. I do think there has kind of been a right-wing reaction that has embraced racialism and is dangerous and not a good path to go down.
And now they're flirting with Holocaust denial and Hitler and absolving Hitler of blame and much more.
I think you're wrong to include Daryl in that group. Now, the other thing is, I'm sorry, because maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. You're saying people that I've had conversations with have downplayed the Holocaust? Well, who are the two guys?
Daryl Cooper and the other
Ian Carroll. I've never podcasted with Ian Carroll. I have podcasted with Daryl Cooper once. And he absolutely did not downplay any of the Nazi atrocities at all. And I think that if we're zooming out here a little bit, maybe this is kind of part of the disconnect. Broadly speaking, in American culture, the idea that it has not been driven into people enough that the Nazis were bad and that Adolf Hitler he is literally the modern devil. He is much more so than the actual devil. Adolf Hitler is what's viewed as the most evil thing, to the point that, I mean, just my entire life growing up, if there was a guy who sold soup on Seinfeld who was like authoritarian, he's a soup Nazi. Right. Everyone was Hitler. The left called George Bush Hitler, and they called Obama Hitler, and they called Trump Hitler. Every single enemy that we've gone to war with always called Hitler. Saddam Hussein's the new Hitler. Muammar Gaddafi's the new Hitler. Putin's the new Hitler. It is so the idea that like we haven't driven into people enough that Adolf Hitler was a really bad guy.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying just as the left likes to play with very dark, ugly stuff, and they've done it for decades, they have played down Chairman Mao's murder of the Chinese throughout his era in power. They played down Stalin. They still march on occasions with posters of Lenin. They've spent decades trying to do down evils that were done on their side. And I would suggest that one of the things that is going on at the moment is, despite, or maybe because of what you just described, there are movements now on the right in America, subcultures, including people who follow both of you, who are very interested in playing with this absolute beyond the pale thing. Why somebody like Jake Shields wants to play around with Holocaust denial? Why?
I can't answer for Jake Shields. I don't know.
Why do you think?
Idea. I have no idea. I think
I'm telling
a
you,
lot of people get captured by audience capture.
Captured by their audience.
Interesting with Jake Shields. Jake Shields is pretty.
Yeah, he's absolutely
Pretty
not. I mean, he is without a doubt a Nazi sympathizer. I don't even know that I ever followed him, but he would always show up in my feed. As a matter of fact, I know I've never followed him. I know who he is. He's, not very bright. He's a good fighter. He's not very bright on any other topic. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But his rhetoric got more and more crazy
Extreme.
when it came to like he is anti-Semitic. He does blame everything on the Jews, and he is a Nazi sympathizer. I don't know why he's bringing this up, because I don't see, again, I do.
Yeah, it's a different thing from Dave and Daryl.
Yeah, like I've never heard a Dave's, number one, I believe Dave is Jewish, if I remember correctly.
He lost family members in the Holocaust. So.
And number two, Dave's argument is not anti-Semitic, it's political and anti-war in nature. I disagree with him on the merits of what he's talking about, but it isn't anti-Semitic. And the same thing goes with you, Chris. You're clearly not, you're not bigoted in any way that I know of, or it has indicated in any conversation that we've had. It's a political debate wrapped around a conflict in the Middle East. And who's right, who's wrong, and there's an argument to be made on either side of it. And I'm on one side of it, and you're on the other, and I'm right and you're wrong. I mean, that's okay.
No, see, it's me and Dave on one side, and there's you on the other, and 2 versus 1 means we win. That's how it works.
Well, I don't know about that.
But yeah, I generally see it similar to Dave. Dave is probably closest to me politically than most people out there. I'm generally a libertarianish anti-war guy, and that's what Dave is. And that's where his arguments come from, and I share a lot of his arguments. We were both influenced by Ron Paul.
Well, I share
a little bit more.
I share those arguments too, and I am anti-war, but I'm also, you can't be so extreme anti-war that war is never an answer, because war fixes some shit. There's no doubt about it. Nothing else would have fixed freaking World War II other than war. I'm not saying that it should have went the way it did, or I know that it shouldn't have gone the way it did. But the fact is sometimes you got to kill some people to set things right in the world. There's no other way around it. We can pretend otherwise, and I think it's naivete when we do believe that, because there's.
Yeah, I'm not a pacifist. There are some just wars.
Yeah, I'd agree that the last 3 or 4 that America has participated in weren't justified, or at least in retrospect sure didn't make sense. But I don't see any other, and I haven't heard from you or anybody else a good a solution for Palestine and Jerusalem. In the Israelis. I haven't heard a good solution. And I think
the legal solution has been that they have to end the occupation. They took the West Bank and Gaza by military force. They try to say it was a preemptive strike or whatever. But basically, they attacked various countries and took land through war.
I don't
they
think
should.
They can give that up, but it doesn't stop the rockets coming from their side into Israel. And if you were living in Israel, I think you'd be like, F those people, let's go take over their land, because guess what? They can't shoot rockets from within eyesight of Israeli soldiers, so therefore they need to occupy that. And I would too. There's no other solution. And then if that doesn't work, and now you come in, you raid the country, you kill thousands of people, you take a bunch of hostages, including Americans, and you do horrific things to them. At that point, it's game over. I'm going through there with up-armored bulldozers, and I'm just going through there, and I'm raising everything. That's my feel on it. And I think at some point, that's the only solution. It's not a very humanitarian solution. It's not a very nice solution. But at some point, some of those things, war is the only solution, because it does fix things for sure.
Yeah, we don't need to relitigate all that again. But I have argued before it works both ways. They respond to this when this happens, when you've killed this many of our people, bets are off. We go in there and we just slaughter people.
I think
the IDF logic. It's also the Hamas logic.
I think it's human logic. I think it's the only deterrent, because I think 90% of what Israel has done has been in retaliation to other things. And when someone hits you with a hammer, you hit them with a freaking bulldozer. That's how you stop them from doing it, unless you're just a moron. And then you keep sending rockets and killing innocent people and specifically targeting, civilian. It'd be one thing if they targeted military targets. They don't, though. They target housing for Israelis. They target schools. They've blown up buses going back to the 80s and 90s. Like, they specifically target the worst places to inflict the most psychological damage and physical damage. And then on top of that, they fight those wars from underneath schools, from underneath hospitals, from underneath, like, all these things. They've been given billions of dollars in freaking funds for humanitarian aid, and they've turned those humanitarian aid funds into military funds and created tunnel networks, is getting support from Iran with missiles and other weaponry and coordination and training and bullets and guns and all that stuff. So yeah, we're not, I mean, that's the summary of our debate over the last several months on that. And that is the debate summarized by just about everybody out there.
Yeah. And see, I would just say that Dave Smith, he's heard of that all his life. He's heard that all his life, but he's like, you know what, I'm going to look into it a bit more. And these things, they don't really... He wasn't convinced in the end. He changed his mind. He's like, no, look, I understand all that. I understand the rockets. I understand this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, like, what Israel's doing is just inhumane. And I can't support it. Like 50,000, like tens of thousands of dead kids. Like I know that's sort of a demagogic kind of talking point or whatever, bring up dead kids or whatever. But like, this is what Israel's doing. And it's not that, because they say that, Hamas, they're fighting from schools and they're fighting from this, and they sort of basically try and say that's the reason why there's so many civilian deaths. But if you look at the thing, like, if you look at Gaza with satellite photos, and if like 80% of the buildings are destroyed, it's not that Israel thought Hamas was in every single one of those buildings when they blew them up. It's a systematic flattening of the area. I remember, I've always thought this, like, they've never wanted a two-state solution. We don't have to go through all this stuff again, but every now and then it gets reinforced that they never want any kind of peace. They just want to kick all those people out of there. That's been their plan for decades.
Well, to defend Israel on that, I think you're partly correct. Their argument to that sentiment would be they don't want to live in peace either, because they're teaching their kids death to the Jews, death to Israel, from the rivers to the sea. Like, that is the indoctrination from Palestine. And at some point, yes, every person in Israel is going to get fed up with an idea of, like, the rest of the world wants us to live in harmony with these people that want to kill us. So the argument can be made on both sides. And here's what I'll tell you. You were talking about satellite imagery. All you got to do is look at the satellite imagery prior to October 7th and then a couple months after October 7th. Okay, if Palestine wanted to put themselves in a better position, they shouldn't have done what they did on October 7th. It is one of the most horrific. It's what they did on October 7th cannot be justified, and they've lost all sympathy from a lot of people after October 7th. And yes, the response is going to be greater than the initiation of what took place. But that is
1,000 times greater.
Well, that's fine.
1,000 times greater.
A million times greater. I don't care what you call it. But I'm telling you, if you lived in Israel and you were constantly getting rocket attacks and dealing with the
not constantly. I think that's getting exaggerated a little bit. If you look at the rockets over 20 years, there's only, I think I said before, Israel killed more people than Hamas rockets have killed in 20 years. Israel killed more people than that in a week.
Well, I mean, they're a bigger army. Like, I don't know.
And Israel put Hamas into power. That always gets dismissed. It's like, we have to do this because look at how bad Hamas are. Well, you put them in power.
I understand the politics of it, and I understand the strategy from Netanyahu, and I'm not saying that it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I think that
I'd say it's wrong.
I do believe that Israel, most people in Israel genuinely believe that the Palestinians are an existential threat. And once you're at that point, and it goes back prior to 1940, and everything that took place and the whole dynamics of it, it's a shit situation, and it's been tit for tat, and it's really hard. Like you can say, well, they did this, and then I would have a response to they did the, and that is how it plays out. Neither one of them are good guys at the end of the day, but
one of them immigrated there. You know what I mean? That's another factor of it. It's like you got two people that can't get along, and the people that were already there. I know people debate, you know, because Israel was there thousands of years ago, and a bunch of Jews remained there the whole time. But we're talking like single-digit percentages for a while, and it just seems funny. Anyway,
there was a lot of horrific treatment of the Jews in that area prior to what took place, right? And I heard something the other day. Maybe it was
a response to what was. I don't justify it, but it was like these immigrants are coming to take over this country, so we're going to stop that. We're going to kill them. Like, it's not justified, but that's, you know, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. But yeah. Anyway, as I said, we're relitigating.
Not relitigate this as we decided that we weren't going to do it.
Just keep listening to Dave Smith. He makes great points.
Play a few more minutes,
even though his family's upset with him.
And then
position, he's still right.
Yeah, let's play a few more minutes of this, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Audience. Yeah, I think that's the thing. You get a lot of positive reinforcement from a bunch of twisted people.
Well, it's also, I mean, there's something about, Michael Malice had that great line. He goes, when you take the red pill, you're supposed to take one and not swallow the whole bottle. Yes. And I think there's like this dynamic. What happens is, and of course, people know the red pill is the analogy from the Matrix. The idea that you wake up to realizing that so much of the stuff you believed was bullshit propaganda.
Absolutely.
And is all lies. And this is a real danger when the establishment and the institutions are all caught with their pants down, having sold.
Just leave this up for the rest of the show, I think. Thanks, Base. Mike D for life. You're also quite base, I can tell.
A bunch of very consequential policies based on lies. And then once people realize that, they go, well, what else have they been lying to me about? And then they almost want to look into every single thing and go, yeah, I think the whole thing was lies. Now, I agree with you. There's danger in that. And I think that there are some things that then people jump to conclusions that are totally wrong. But I guess I tend to look at that and go, well, then maybe the people with power, not random podcasters, but like the people with real power should do a better job of not lying through their fucking teeth about everything.
Well, maybe you have power. Maybe you have power, both of you. We live in an era where podcasters have a lot of power. If you go on a podcast with Jake Shields, and Jake Shields goes on to another podcast and says he doesn't think...
Something I did want to say about Jake Shields, the first reason I knew that he was kind of crazy, he talked about Goebbels, because Goebbels, they killed their children.
Yeah.
You know, Hitler died, and they poisoned, I think it was his wife, or they got a doctor to do it. They had 5 kids, and they poisoned them and killed their own children before killing themselves. And Jake Shields was basically arguing that that was based. Goebbels, he did the right thing. Most men wouldn't, you know, be able to do such a thing. He was trying to argue because the Soviets came in, there was rape and stuff. But if you look at why they say why they did it, and it's got nothing to do with the Soviet, you know, rape armies coming in. It was basically like, I don't want my kids to live in a world where we lost, or where the Jews won, or whatever they said. And there's Jake Shields going, isn't that awesome how he killed his kids?
Goebbels was a psychopath. That's the beginning and end of it. I mean, it's not that complicated.
Yeah. It's funny, I read a little bit about him. He had a lot of trouble with the ladies. I think he was trying to get laid. It didn't happen for like in his 30s or something. I remember reading that going, wondering, does that have anything to do with it maybe? Like,
well, I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I think probably the fact that he was a psycho probably was a turnoff to. I don't think that just developed after he got laid, right? It wasn't like, oh, I finally got laid, now I'm a psycho, and now I'm believing the extermination of an entire population of people. One thing that is really, because I generally really do like Douglas Murray, it's pissing me off that he keeps bringing up Jake Shields as the straw man on this. Neither Joe nor Dave have any interaction.
Oh, to be fair, I think Dave has gone on Jake Shields' podcast.
Oh, okay.
So that's, but I don't think there was anything too spicy in that. Definitely not from Dave, and I think Jake didn't say anything too crazy in that episode. But to be fair, I guess that's what he'd be saying. He'd be saying, you've talked to Jake Shields. I was going to bring that up too. Great point from Laura. Yeah, I think it's good. You know, like us, the dynamic we have, it's kind of rare, I think. Like this looks somewhat civil, but it's probably as civil as you'll find out there, and we do a better job of, you know, just arguing in good faith, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that hard. I wish my wife would learn it.
I'm sure many people in the world could benefit from the lessons we share, you know.
100%.
Yeah, a little bit more and then we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. What do you think's happening there? That's an exercise of power.
Okay.
Okay. And I agree with you about the breakdown of trust. Absolutely. We have lived through an era where, in real time, we saw something called a conspiracy, the lab leak, which turned to be true, as you and others said it might be from the beginning.
I find that to be very racist.
And against Joe?
How dare you
or
say
against...
Both of you.
It
Both
used
of
to
you.
be
Very
It
racist.
used to
That
be
was-
racist
that
when
was
we were
crazy.
saying that it was likely that the COVID variant had come out from the place making COVID variants.
Especially
But
since
isn't it
it's
great?
in the exact
Just
town.
seemed like it.
Dude,
Seemed
isn't it
like
the-
it was possible to us.
By the way,
But the point,
Ask yourself this: who has access to your medical history?
I went to fast forward, but I hit 0, so it sent me back to the start of the podcast. So I think I've lost wherever I was. If anyone remembers, I don't know where I was.
I want to
But that'll probably do us anyway.
share this part real quick because this has to do with it. And this is Sam Harris.
Oh yeah, he sort of lost the plot, I think, the last couple of years.
This is another guy that I respected prior to COVID, and he just went full freaking insanity after COVID and continues on that track. And he's talking about
right,
the
and
thing.
this is something I've complained about with Lex Friedman. Right, I mean Lex is another very nice guy. I don't think he's ill-intentioned at all, but I mean he's going to sit down with Putin really and conduct an interview. That's
Good night, Jeff.
would be useful for the world. I mean that seems extraordinarily unlikely to go well. I mean, I would love Lex to prove me wrong there, but I saw how it goes when he talks to people like Tucker Carlson or Kanye West or any other controversial figure. So some of those conversations have been just disastrous, just founts of misinformation. So it is with the All In podcast guys, right? Like
This is the clip that I was looking for. This is what I want to play.
Joe is a genuinely good guy who wants good things for people, but he is honestly in over his head on so many topics of great consequence. Right? When he brings someone on to just shoot the shit about how the Holocaust is not what you think it was, right? And maybe Churchill's the bad guy in World War II. Or he's got Dave Smith, being treated as an expert on Israel and Palestine and the history of that conflict and the moral emergency that came to the world's attention on October 7th.
Oh, sorry.
And what is appropriate to think in the aftermath of all of that, right? Dave Smith is the only reason why anyone knows what Dave Smith thinks about any of this is very likely because Joe had him on multiple times to talk about it, right? He's a pure misinformation artist and on top of many others. And when Joe talks to someone like Trump or Tucker Carlson or any of these other guys who lie as freely as they breathe and doesn't push back against any of their lies. In fact, in Trump's case, really fairly energetically helped put his lies into the most plausible possible shape. It is irresponsible. I mean, it is directly harmful. Our society is as politically shattered as it is in part because of how Joe has interacted with information. Again, I don't think this is. I think a lot of this is inadvertent, or maybe all of it's inadvertent. But it's it is also avoidable, right? He could actually take the responsibility that really is his to take at this point to get his facts straight and have someone other than Jamie there riding shotgun with him. Where I mean, he could have two brilliant journalists whose full-time job, he could pay each of them $1 million a year just to sit there and do and make sure he doesn't put his foot in his mouth in a colossally irresponsible way, right? I mean, it's like
So I actually responded to this, and I couldn't find it on my feed now. So his take is that, number one, two journalists. So first of all, this is a completely leftist propaganda take on everything. Number one, you have no business talking about anything. He said this multiple times, whether it was COVID, whether it was everything else. Like I used to like Sam Harris. He did a debate with Jordan Peterson. Extremely well done. I disagreed with him completely, but liked how he was able to articulate a lot of different points and all those things. But here's his take. No, you don't need Jamie over there. You need two journalists. And what he's really saying there is you need to have two leftists to be able to tell you, to be able to arbitrate the truth. And you should be paying them $1 million each so that they can tell you what the truth is. Jamie doesn't have the capacity to look stuff up and say, hey, this is just objectively what's going on. I don't know what Jamie's political leanings are. I have no clue. All he does is look stuff up, objectively present information that he can find, whether it be good, whether it be bad, whether it support what Joe's saying, whether it support or deny what the guest is saying. But there seems to be no dog in the fight with the information that Jamie presents. But what he's telling you is like, no. Like what qualifies a journalist to arbitrate the truth? Seriously, like what is it other than the fact that if you say journalist, that's code for a leftist, communist, socialist freaking person from academia that has been completely conditioned and told what to think, how to think it, and what the outcome should be. So like I don't even understand this thought process or why someone like that who's clearly intelligent would say those things and think it even makes sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like he wants to bring on the Facebook fact checkers to.
Oh, he's 100%. He is 100% behind censorship. He's talked about this several times during COVID, how it is irresponsible basically to allow anyone to have a controversial opinion or opinion of which he or the left disagrees with, or academia disagrees with, or the pharmaceutical industry disagrees with. That's exactly what he has, he's tried to promote many, many times.
Yeah, he's basically arguing that, like, it's such a bad thing for these other opinions to be out there. Because things, especially political things, it's not as simple as right or wrong. Or I know there is objective truth and all that, but there are different sides of things, and you can highlight one side over another. There's, it's a bit more complicated than just true, yes, or not true. And that's why it's important to get this big smorgasbord of all different opinions. The majority of opinions you're going to hear are probably wrong, like in life, people you meet, also on TV. It's like he thinks the TV is always 100% correct, and that's where, or the media or whatever, and that's where you should get your truth from. And then you've got these irresponsible people not doing the truth, so we need to stop them and only have the experts of the media. And I think Douglas Murray seems to have the same perspective throughout this. I haven't seen it, but from what I've heard, you got to trust the experts, and opposing viewpoints are dangerous, irresponsible, and you shouldn't platform them.
It's the exact same argument, which is why I wanted to search for that, because it's the exact same argument, and that's unfortunate. But I mean, what kind of moron? Seriously, in this day and age, I don't care if you're on the left or the right, what kind of moron is going to suggest what we need is two journalists? Like, what information have we gotten? And even going back to like, hey, you know what? We're free to form our own opinion. You're not free. None of us even know what opinions we have because we're not given access to the actual truth. Like when COVID first came down and, the COVID vaccines first came out, like we didn't know what we know now, right? Most of us have very different opinions based on information that comes out. We were told, and a lot of people spewed and parroted, hey, they're 100% safe, 100% effective. They stop COVID in its tracks. It stops the spread. You can't get COVID. You can't spread COVID if you have the COVID vaccines. And by the way, they're completely safe. Nobody's getting any sort of, vaccine injuries from the COVID vaccine. We know that's all bullshit now. But what we don't know is bullshit or not, because we've never gone through it, is our history of World War II, our history of World War I, our history of Vietnam, our history of 9/11, for instance. Like, that is never actually, anyone that had a alternative opinion or theory has been deemed just a quack. And the fact is we've gotten to a point where a very few people have a 100% control of the information that we're given. So we can't make good decisions and decide what is the truth, because we're not given the entire information to begin with, which is why I don't believe that the moon landing actually took place. I'm just saying. I'll leave it there. All right. So, Chris, you got anything else before we close this down?
No, that's probably a pretty good run. Yeah, I generally agree with everything you've been saying with the platforming stuff. So even though you're wrong about a bunch of other topics, I'll give you credit. You're right on that one.
Admit I'm right on Israel.
No, I don't think that's going to happen, But as I said, just keep listening to Dave Smith, other people, He's heard it all before, He's heard all that Hamas this, Hamas whatever, and he sees through it, And one day you can see through it too, So I got hope for you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
It's interesting, just quickly, Dave Smith, he did say, sorry, yeah, you go.
No, go
ahead. Dave Smith said, because this Daryl Cooper gets painted as like anti-Semitic or something, but Dave Smith says, listening to his podcast gave me more insight of the Israeli perspective of them suffering through the pogroms in Europe, Hitler and before that even, and wanting to find a place of their own or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he said, but Dave Smith basically said, Daryl Cooper opened my eyes to the Israeli side of things. So he's not so much, they say he's anti-Semitic, yet he can do a nuanced enough view that Dave Smith could say, he sort of like convinced me a little bit of the Israeli perspective. I'm still generally against Israel. But, no, I think he's a fair actor, Dave Smith, I think.
I think Dave Smith, and I think from what I've seen of Daryl Cooper so far, is I think both of them are discussing everything they're discussing in good faith. I don't think that there's, a bigoted view of Jews involved. Like you can come up with 100 different reasons of why Daryl Cooper may come to the conclusions that he's coming to. Maybe he's misinformed. Maybe he's interpreting history incorrectly. But I don't think it's because of some sort of prejudice. That's just not the reason. And we're allowed to have our own opinions, and we're allowed to interpret what we know to be true. And that's the point of freedom of speech, period. I mean, that's the point of the free exchange of ideas. And this is exactly what people like Sam Harris and apparently Douglas Murray don't want, because the problem, what Sam Harris is really saying, and Sam Harris has been really affected by this, when he puts out his views on, especially going back to COVID and everything that took place there, and then you hear the alternative views, no matter how brilliant Sam Harris is, the alternative views make more sense and are more compelling. He doesn't like it. That's ultimately what is taking place. And I think I'm going to listen to the full podcast. I don't want to come to any conclusions based on just the snippets that we've heard, but that's the left's stance. Because the reality is that I think most of the things that we believe on the right, the Constitution, capitalism, all these things, like, they just win. They win the argument every single time, and the only way that you can win the argument and be opposed to those is if you shut down the information that goes to that, or you spew nothing but propaganda and lies and twist reality around, and then you can start getting people on your side that are dumb enough to believe the bullshit that you're spewing. But once they start hearing the alternative, or once they get out there and live in real life, that's why so many people, once you hit 30 or so and you got bills and you're paying taxes and you're trying to make a living and you're doing all the things you're doing, suddenly you're no longer a freaking Democrat, right? No, you're no longer a liberal. You've moved on and you realize, hey, guess what? These things that these people were telling me, they only work if you live in your parents' home, and they sound good, but you know, they're not practical in the end because, well, for a lot of reasons. All right, folks, even though Gary is always right, I agree and disagree with both of you guys to some things, but just like Gary said, that's what's great about the First Amendment. Yeah. I can guarantee you Laura agrees with me about 98% of the time and you 2% of the time. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, you know, people, it's knowledge is it's a journey, you know. So you start off at sort of some bad numbers like that, but as time goes on, you know, we'll fix that deficit of, you know, who you believe or whatever. But yeah, no, it's good to debate all these things, and yeah, generally you should platform all ideas, and you know, the market. What happens to the marketplace of ideas?
Yeah.
Let the best idea win under intense scrutiny from all angles. This idea that Douglas Murray seems to talk about, like, well, there's the experts. You've got Dave Smith, he's not an expert. You've got to listen to the experts. Well, the experts are usually wrong about everything. And it should be mentioned that Douglas Murray was a massive Iraq cheerleader. One of his books is called Why We Need Neoconservatism, like Why We Need It or something like that. He wrote an article a year or two ago talking about the Iraq War where he's not even sure whether it was a good thing or a bad thing or whatever. So yeah, he's the one that doesn't want you listening to the non-experts, and I think he was wrong listening to the experts on the Iraq thing.
Well, the
point
fact
where he
is,
still can't change his mind.
Without freedom of speech, you can't have democracy, because you can't have democracy without and use your vote, your voice to make a decision. If you're only given half the facts, that's not democracy. That's some contrived society that is a predetermined outcome by our overlords. And that's not what any of us want. All right, folks. Well, listen, we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for a lively discussion. We appreciate, it always is a lot more fun when you guys, jump in here. And I especially appreciate when you guys make fun of Chris. It really brightens my heart, brightens my day. It makes me sleep better.
Yeah, it's, you know, not the best element of the chat, but you know, you take the good with the bad.
I think it's probably the best. I think that's why I come here. All right, folks, listen, we want you to have a wonderful week, a wonderful weekend. And, you know, until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you.